It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy's here, Alex is here, Jason Snell is here. Jason's Mac Apple report card is just out. We'll talk about that. Of course, both Alex and Jason have Vision Pros. Are they going to return them? We'll find out. And what about that thing Mark Zuckerberg said about the Meta Quest being the best VR helmet out there, period? All that and a lot more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 909, recorded Tuesday, February 20th, 2024. A $3,500 cheeseburger. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Delete Me. Have you ever searched for your name online and didn't like how much of your personal information was available? Didn't like it? I blew my stack. That's why we subscribe to Delete Me. Delete Me helps reduce risk from identity theft, credit card fraud, robocalls, cybersecurity threats, harassment, and unwanted communications overall. Our CEO's been using it for more than a year after some scammer decided to use her phone number to text her direct reports and ask them for money. How would they know all that information? Well, all you have to do is look online and you'll see. They are constantly gathering information about your addresses, photos, emails, relatives, phone numbers, social media, property value, and more. These data brokers are cockroaches, but Delete Me can deal with them. Exterminate them. Delete Me's experts will find and remove all your personal information from hundreds of data brokers, reducing your online footprint, keeping you and your family safe. Most importantly, they continue to scan and continue to remove the personal information regularly. That's because these data brokers are like cockroaches. They come back. They repopulate these records unless you're vigilant. And since, of course, privacy exposures and incidents affect individuals differently, we all have different threat models. Delete Me's privacy advisors make sure you get the support you need when you need it. Protect yourself. Reclaim your privacy. Visit joindeleteme.com/twit. Use the code TWIT for 20% off. That's joindeleteme.com/twit. Offer code TWIT. It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Look like I plucked it from the air. MacBreak Weekly. We're presenting it to you now. The show that covers everything Apple with that giggling Andy Anako. Thank you for laughing at my joke, Andrew. I appreciate it.
You saw it ripe on the tree. You plucked it and you put it right in your pocket.
I don't know why I did that.
Leo.
There was a gesture. If you're watching a video, you I don't know what I was doing, but I got it, and then I gave it to you.
It's like you're the audience's uncle, and he just found a quarter behind your ear.
Yeah, that's basically it.
That's how you connect with the audience.
It's only a matter of time before I pinch their cheeks really hard. Also with us, Jason Snell, 6colors.com.
Live long and prosper.
Oh, look at that.
Something. Or 6 colors. I'll add a finger to the colors.
Wasn't it, as I remember, in one of the early Star Treks, one of the cast members had to have the fingers taped?
The old lady who plays the Vulcan altar in the first time they do it, she didn't know, she had to have it like below the camera, and then she brought it up because she couldn't do it. Yeah. Not everyone can do the Vulcan salute.
I can only do it weirdly. I can only do it with my right hand. I can't do it with my left hand.
Turns out if you're 5 years old and you're watching Star Trek every day, you learn how to do the Vulcan salute. You learn how to do the Spock eyebrow raise. Yep. You do all these things. If you get them young enough, you can get them in there.
Get them young.
Good to be here.
Also, we got him young. He's been with us now for almost 20 years. Alex Lindsay.
Otherwise, in South Park, it's moo, moo, moo. From the very first episode when Cartman is, abducted.
Moo, moo. Okay.
They were talking, the cows were talking about being turned inside out, and the aliens are like, my bad, is moo, moo, moo.
This one's going right over my head, but I am an old man, as I have recently discovered. Much to my shock and dismay. So, who still has a Vision Pro? Turns out Micah does, because there is a loophole in the way you do it.
Yes.
He's got his till February 29th, although it's all packed up and ready to go.
Yeah. So basically you declare your intent to return it, and then Apple gives you 2 weeks to actually send it in. So you get an extra like bonus week and a half.
Right.
But boy, that's playing with 30. I might do that with a MacBook, but with a 35, like a $4,000.
Yeah.
I would say, you know what? I'm driving that thing back to you personally to make sure.
You can't you? You can, even if you bought it online, you can bring it to the store and they have a whole process. Yeah. But you have to save your packaging. I'm sure you all. No, you probably didn't. I know Alex Lindsay went, I'm keeping this. I'm throwing away the packaging.
I have a bad habit of keeping Apple packaging in general. It's just so nice.
Yeah.
It's so nice. So there is a storage area in my garage
all
with
boxes,
lots of Apple
all empty boxes
of stuff. So I have a tendency, because I do send so much back from other things, I have a tendency to open things very carefully.
Yeah.
So the only thing I usually pull out is I pull out the device and I pull out the sticker.
Yeah, I always leave the charging cables in there because I know I have plenty of those. And why rewrap those? And when you get to be my age and you go in the garage, you go, oh, look, all the new Mac stuff's here. You'll be very happy until you open the empty box.
I will say the cables that Apple sends out with the newer stuff right now,
nice,
finely braided power cables. They're beautiful, the best,
and they're soft somehow.
Yeah.
They're how about you, Jason? You're going to keep them?
Of course, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's worth. I think there's a lot there in detail to spend time with, and I want to learn about and see where this platform goes. I'm excited about it. I know a lot is being made of people returning Vision Pros, but was that not going to happen? It's a very expensive product, and Apple will let you return it for no penalty within a couple of weeks. Of course, people are trying it out, and I'm not surprised that many of them are returning it because it's $4,000 and they probably don't want to spend that money on a 1.0 product. I'm not sure. I think a lot of people try a lot of Apple products and return them after 2 weeks, honestly. But, sure, I'm keeping mine. Absolutely. Yeah. And I kept the box, although it's a lot of box. I don't know if I'm going to keep it.
But it's a lot cheaper than the $200 travel case. So you just use the box and then you're good.
Yeah, I bought like a $30 case on Amazon.
A lot of cheaper cases fit. As it turns out.
Yeah.
But not quite so perfectly.
So, mine's got a little Velcro bit, so you can just fit it. It fits actually just fine. It fits perfectly.
I've seen people do a Pelican case with pick and pull, so you can make it just match perfectly. That's a good choice, probably. Not exactly the least bulky. So the only obviously I'm asking because of the plethora of articles claiming all sorts of things about the number of returns. Apple does not reveal that information. And so I think what happens is people call the stores or have friends at the stores and they base it on what their friends say. Bloomberg, which I think is probably the most trustworthy, says it's average to maybe slightly above average return rate.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah. If you bought it, you're pretty all in just by virtue of forking over the $3,500.
I feel as though everybody is doing exactly the thing they planned to do with it when they bought it. There are those for whom, hey, like Jason saying, you know what, I have the money, I'm going to buy it. It looks like an interesting adventure. I know it's a 1.0, but I want to be here from the start. And there are people who said, I want to borrow one for a couple of weeks and try it out. If I like it, I'll start saving my money for next year, a couple years from now for the next version. So I do think there's no surprises here.
Yeah. As for the number of people who go in for a demo and buy it, I saw a number which I thought was from Apple, but maybe I'm wrong. It was something like 15% of the people who go in and try it end up buying it.
I'm sure Apple didn't release any information.
No, it couldn't have been from Apple.
The default.
Yeah.
But if so, I'm amazed if anybody can go in and be like, yeah, okay, here's my credit card, $4,000, charge me up.
On the other hand, that demo, it is neurologically designed to make you think this is the greatest thing ever, and you are going to be missing out on something that's going to change and improve your life if you don't get this. And I think that if there's any disappointment, it's that you get home and then now you're just somebody wearing goggles on your head in your living room, very awkwardly answering emails and trying to be amazed by the dinosaur in the room. And you realize that compressed within that 30, what you want is that 30-minute experience. You're trying to chase that dragon literally and figuratively, and you're not going to get it with the suite of experiences that you're going to get with it right now.
Chasing the dragon is an apt description for it because the first time you try it, just like heroin, it's a really good high. And the more you wear it, the more the high, you need.
I think Leo, also, by any chance, is our new sponsor heroin? That was real subtle.
From Bayer Corporation. They actually made the name heroin, right? Bayer.
The makers of OxyContin.
Yeah. No, that's somebody else.
I think it also depends on the culture that you're in. I think that one of the things that we were talking about who sends it back and who wants to keep it. And I think that for folks who are kind of half in, half out of the Apple ecosystem, I think it doesn't have the same impact because you've got a bunch of things somewhere else. You've got all, everything's kind of mixed and matched. If you're all in on the Apple ecosystem, it's a pretty great device because all your movies are there and your notes are there and your messages are there and everything else is all kind of integrated in. And I think that is I think it has a much bigger impact on people who are using the whole ecosystem as opposed to people who treat it like a external device. Because I know that, like, I use my Quest almost every day, but my experience is there are things that I want to do on the Quest. I go do them, and then I set it down. And so I think that's a different relationship that I have to that headset, as opposed to the Apple one where I get in there and I just find myself doodling about, downloading new apps and downloading the old iPad apps and seeing how they work and watching movies. I watched The Arrival last night. I meant to only watch one little piece of it and found myself watching like half of it. And so I think that it really depends on whether you're all in or not as to whether you feel really tied into it.
Yeah. You can watch 70 millimeter films in it in their full original aspect ratio.
Yeah, I mean, you get whatever. Okay, go ahead, Jason.
I mean,
have you tried it?
You
saw the article, and it was an Apple.
Jason has feelings.
It's deeply overhyped because, I mean, the beauty of any of these things is if the app is written properly, you don't need letterboxing. But the story that says you can get this 70 millimeter super widescreen format, it's not actually 70 millimeter. The Reddit thread is great because somebody immediately, it's like, well, actually, unless it's projected on film, 70 millimeter stock, it's not really 70 millimeter film.
Thank you, Reddit.
But the point stands, it's an ultra Panavision, ultra wide format, and it just shows ultra wide. There's no letterbox. The problem is, my guess is that it's still the probably 16:9 with letterboxes, 1080 or maybe 4K source. But the truth is that, a good Vision Pro app respects the aspect ratio of the video and is not a box with letterbox bars on it. Now, that said, some apps do that, and I'm very disappointed in them. But the good ones don't do that. The TV app on Apple TV does not do that, I think.
That would be a very extreme letterbox.
So,
I remember I had a laser disc of Lawrence of Arabia in the original aspect ratio.
Oh man!
And it was like
on a
looking
4x3 TV. It's
slot.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it was really.
Yeah.
It was really.
Yeah. You could literally watch that movie, I think, twice, just in a stack on a 4x3 TV.
Easy. Probably 3 times.
And I think that the funny thing about the image that they showed there, that you showed there as well, is the one thing that I have found is that watching film on without a background it shows up, 24 frames per second is kind of low frame rate. Like it's kind of a sluggy frame rate. And so you don't notice it when something still is behind it. So when your wall or a theater or whatever is behind your screen.
Oh, interesting.
You don't notice that 24 is slow. As soon as but when you don't have something behind the screen, you have a 90 frame per second background moving around with your head, and then you have the screen on top of it. And I find that to be I really notice the frame rate when the screen is floating. Now, the only question I have related to that is whether it's properly taking the entire environment and notching it up to 96 frames a second, because that's what it needs to do to have an even increment for the 24. Or if it's doing 90 and then for some reason we are seeing some kind of weird version, because I feel like the 24 is very choppy when I don't put the theater environment in. And so I find, it's really it's unwatchable to me. But when I jump into a theater or I jump into Joshua Tree or whatever, I find that to be a much more pleasing experience. The other thing is that I find that the experience of movies is, because the field of view is limited horizontally, I don't really like the widescreens as much as I like the IMAX version of 143.
Oh, interesting.
So when you go into 143, so like the latest AJR video for whatever reason is like 144 or 143.5 or something. And the so that one, as well as like Wizard of Oz, is 133. And those, because the way your field of view works inside of the headset, they look great. Like they're full screen and they're filling up everything. With the wide screens, I find myself looking back and forth a lot more than I would in the normal environment because I don't have the full, field of view horizontally to make.
Little pro tip though: if you sit in the first 5 rows at an IMAX, you're also looking around.
You should never do that.
I know. That's all I could
I don't even think that those seats should exist.
Wow.
There are like. In an IMAX theater, there are like 8 seats that I will sit in, and
the rest,
once those 8 seats are full, as far as I'm concerned, like that.
It was the only way I could get tickets to Oppenheimer. But the one at the Metreon does have like an orchestra pit where you can't sit right up front. There's an orchestra pit for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe I don't know why, because the screen goes below the floor, I guess.
Oh yeah, the screen goes lower. Yeah, it goes down below. Most of the larger IMAX screens all have that kind of huge drop off in the front. So like. That you have there, yeah, absolutely. And then the smaller ones have the.
So I thought you were supposed to look around. So you're not supposed to go like this. Well,
you can look around, but I'm just saying that.
Wow, Cillian Murphy's got a lot of nose hair. Holy cow!
The nice thing, yeah, exactly. If you're sitting right up front, you are definitely looking around a lot.
Yeah.
But if you're about 6 or 7 rows from the back, you'll get this nice big view of that. And that's what you can kind of reproduce in the Apple. And, the Apple Theater lets you jump around. You can sit in the front if you want, Leo. Like if you want to reproduce your home.
Oh, that's cool.
You can choose the front row. You can choose the back row. I choose the middle. I mean, the middle row.
Is that a knob you turn or?
It's like a little.
It's in the playback controls.
Yeah.
It's a setting.
It's like in the controls.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Does it say what row would you like to sit in?
It doesn't say what row. It just says front, middle, back, and then I think you can sit to the right or left, which I don't know why you would do that.
Well, that settles it. I'm buying a Vision Pro.
You can sit in the main level or the balcony.
I'll be at the Apple Store tonight. Yeah. Hold one for me, guys.
Yeah.
No. Does it also simulate the date next to you who's complained to you that if you hadn't taken so long with dinner, you wouldn't be sitting well?
And the sticky floor. Let's not forget the sticky
2.0 feature.
Just like Carrot has, Carrot should make their own theater version, where it's like a Carrot level thing where it has annoying people around you and people eating popcorn and people talking on the cell phone to really reproduce the entire experience of actually going to a theater.
Except you can also just basically explode a can of shaving cream right in their face if they don't shut up.
You can eject them and watch them fire through the ceiling. Yeah, like it's exactly.
But it's super interesting because when film was trying to compete with television, the reason why Lawrence of Arabia was so super widescreen was that they're trying to create that enveloping experience.
Right.
And even if you do have a really, really, really big, even like by expensive standards, like a big 80-inch TV in your living room, you're still going to be able to take in the whole scene. And it wasn't until the first time I was watching movies with a VR headset that I, again, just simple, hey, here's a Blu-ray rip from my library, but now it's really is on the proper size screen that would have been like in the 60s. And I realized that, the director set up this shot so that I would have to turn my head from this way to another to catch what's happening in the background while people are talking. Oh, he was more clever than I thought. And I already like this movie. So there's going to be a lot of people who are going to rediscover what movies were meant, how it was meant to be enjoyed.
I remember going to see, when I was a kid, Circus World with my grandma and Cinerama, which is even wider, right, than 70 millimeter. It's really wide. I remember
lots of wide formats.
Yeah, I remember looking
There's
back.
There's 235, then you get to like 276, and
they didn't make a whole lot of those Cinerama.
Yeah, they're hard to make. Well, I mean, those are anamorphic, so you're stretching it back onto the film.
Isn't 70 millimeter also anamorphic?
Well, so there is, and there's 2 different kinds of 70 millimeters. So what you probably saw Oppenheimer with is 70 millimeter 15 perf, so
and those are square.
So it's 15 perf
almost
70 because what they did is they turn it it's a 70 millimeter, but they turn it on its side. So it's still the same width so that it can run through, but it's a much bigger frame to work with, but still, and I don't think in a true IMAX format, I think that would still be 143. I'd have to look at that. I'm not sure.
Dunkirk was shot IMAX 65 millimeter. Nolan likes that weird film stock. Lawrence of Arabia, super fan of Panavision 70.
Well, it's also the equivalent of 18K, an 18K image.
Wow.
So when you're shooting IMAX, it's
wow.
And I will say that's one thing that you notice. I've noticed more on my Vision Pro than I've noticed ever before is the quality of the film stock that different movies were shot on. I can definitely tell the difference on a Vision Pro. So I don't notice it as much on my TVs, but when I watch it on a Vision Pro, I can you can definitely tell, oh, that's really grainy or lower resolution. They shot that. You can tell what they're not. I can't tell yet what they're shooting on. I can't guess that well, but I can definitely see the difference of older 80s rom-coms or that look much different than what we see now in a modern.
This reminds me a little bit of the early days of hi-fi, where people would listen to music not for the music, but just because of how it would challenge their
Right.
amplifier. I mean,
Quadraphonic sound.
Yeah, these are fine movies. I wouldn't want to watch the Hateful Eight again. In any
I just
format.
like to watch the guitar. I like to watch the guitar scene only because of what,
Oh, you sick man.
I'm just looking for the real reactions that are going on with that in the
Was it not planned?
It was an antique guitar.
It was the Martin Company loaned an authentic 1850 because they were told, and of course they made a reproduction for him to smash.
Oh, thank
but he
goodness.
picked up the wrong one.
Oh,
either knowingly because he's an actor or unknowingly because he's an actor, and so that's why a lot of those reactions were, oh my god.
And I think she says Lee even she's going no.
That wasn't acting, folks. That she really didn't want
when she
him
does
to.
it, she goes when she reacts here. This is not because this was not marked.
That's the real deal.
That was actually because he just took a really expensive guitar and smashed it.
Not just expensive, historic, priceless, one of a kind from the museum, a library of the company that made the guitar.
Wow.
They were not pleased.
Wow,
that's what insurance is for. Film insurance.
Yeah.
So, that's what, can I just say that's why I would worry about lending or letting any film company, because I'm like, okay, well, I mean, if you really think, I mean, it would be an honor for this to appear as a hero prop inside, but you realize that my great great grandparents is the only one of its kind. Yeah. And then when they're on set, a director says, "What's it insured for? How much would we have to pay if we just toss this in acid for real? $80,000."
I had the 950 that I shot a lot of stuff on, and I had a partner that they were doing a film, in Japan or whatever, and they wanted to rent my camera to add to the F-23s that they had, and I was like, no, I've been on film sets.
Yeah. I remember when we were shooting the open for the Screensavers with Patrick Norton, they had an old classic car, a movie car, Barracuda or something, and the guy said, "Don't turn the wheel too hard because the tires don't fit." I'm sure Patrick paid no attention whatsoever to that advice. All right. Well, so would you say watching The Hateful Eight in Vision Pro would be a superior experience to seeing it in a theater?
I don't know if it'd be superior to seeing it in a theater, but I will say that if
better than on a TV,
Pro,
I guess, right?
It depends on, I think that for me, I think that at this point, if I'm not watching, I watch almost all my TV stuff with my family, so the Vision Pro isn't really the thing to watch it
That's
on.
my first reaction is that's kind of sad and lonely.
Yeah, but my family's, the kids are old enough now that everybody's got their own thing to do.
Right.
So it's not and I definitely have movies that I like that I don't think the rest of the family wants.
Yeah, I will watch a movie that Lisa's never going to watch just when she's not around.
And so I find myself, I would say at this point, it has to be a really good. I mean, it's gotten this point already, but in my home system is good enough that the movies already have to be really good for me to think about going to the theater. And even going to the theater, I buy tickets and then I find myself canceling because I'm just too busy. I just go, And the last time I went to see Godzilla Plus One, and a bunch of teenagers sat down behind me, and I was like, okay, this is why I don't go to theaters. Like this is, and it's like all the quiet scenes, they're all giggling and dropping stuff and everything else. And I was like, this would have been a better experience at home, and I think that, I went with a friend, so it was fun to watch and talk about it later and everything else. So it was worth it in that sense. But I think that if I would never go to a film by myself again, I really have to go with a family or I'm not going to bother.
So I think the big question with this stuff is what will Apple's presence in this market mean in terms of upgrading the media, right? Because I think that for example, the stuff that the Reddit poster was talking about is like I said, probably the same source as you would get if you bought it for an iPad or your iPhone or your Mac. But with Vision Pro, are some studios going to be prompted to get and offer out of their digital libraries a different version that is because believe it or not, there are different versions for different aspect ratios. HBO often is broadcasting a 16:9 version of a movie that isn't in 16:9, right? So there are these questions. Will they dig some things out of the archive and maybe make them available digitally on something like Vision Pro, where you could actually have a better experience than the stock? And we've seen that with the 3D, where I think we're going to talk probably a little bit about Mark Zuckerberg's comments about the Oculus Quest, but one of the things that's going on is Apple has this film library, and it has not been a particularly pleasant experience to say, I would like to watch a 3D movie on a Quest because the library is not there. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if Apple will spur more availability of digital 3D. I think it already has. And then maybe that'll also go to other platforms. And then my question is, are there other formats? Like I mentioned last week, the 3D version of Dial M for Murder, which looks amazing and is available now.
It was so cool.
And so are there other things that just never really made it to digital because all the devices were shaped the same way and they all had the same features, and so it wasn't really worth it. But now that Apple has those relationships and has the Vision Pro, will there be some more movies and TV shows that they pull that other version that they just never bothered putting out, but maybe it's worth putting on a hard drive somewhere for Vision Pro? That's beyond just 3D, but I think 3D is the start of it.
Yeah, and I think that what's amazing is that Apple successfully didn't make us buy it again. So again, this gets back into when you're in the ecosystem, when you own over 600 movies on Apple TV, because that's just the way you've been buying your movies. Jumping onto the Vision Pro is amazing because I've got 600 movies that I can go through, and of those 600 movies, probably 50 of them are 3D. And so I can, I was able to just kind of jump on, and immediately I have this huge library to work with that I think was compelling. And I will say that, I do think that these extra formats, and I think people will get more experimental with the formats, but what I do find right now with the current version is if someone said, what is the perfect format to shoot on? And I would say IMAX, 1:4:3 IMAX is what I would shoot on because of the feel, how the aspect ratio feels in front of the headset. I find myself, and it's just because the field of view isn't all the way 100, it's not the same field of view horizontally I find it to be much more comfortable to watch 1:4:3, 1:3:3 than I would normally, and so I'd be tempted to shoot 8K and then crop it to 1:4:3 if I was going to do a show right now.
So let's talk about Mark. He felt compelled to post on Instagram. I tried Vision Pro. Here's my take. Shot with Quest's high-resolution mixed reality pass-through, which, as I understand, is actually a little bit misleading because this is not what you see in the Quest 3. This is a pass-through, high-quality version of it. But at least they shot it, and he even showed the poor geek who had to sit there wearing the thing. It's coming up in a second. His take on it, he says, the Quest, there he is. There's the poor guy. Oh, the poor guy. He's smiling, but he's dying inside. Nice house, Mark. Where should I sit? The point of it was as not surprising, the Quest 3 is a better VR experience, period. I have to say, Semicolon would be a better choice. Absolutely. There's the writer in you. Also, he says it's what does he say? 7 times less expensive, which actually is a math problem.
Argue with him there.
Yeah. It is a lot less expensive. 1/7 the cost.
I remember saying like last year while we were talking about these VR Apple rumors that the one person who really, 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 really wants Apple to do this is Mark Zuckerberg.
Sure.
Because it's a validation of all the money and time he's spent making products in this category. So when I saw this video, I mean, I chuckled a little, right? Because some of his like, oh, it's a better product, period. It's like, well, except for this and maybe except for that, and depending on what you want. And they are different products. But the Quest 3 isn't a bad product at all. I've got one. It's good. It's much better at some things than the Vision Pro because Apple didn't focus on those things. And like they relied on hand tracking, and their hand tracking is way better than Facebook's or Meta's or whatever, Mark Zuckerberg's personal hand tracking where he watches your hands, whatever it is. But it's a different product. It's
the word
fine.
tracking always a little challenging.
Watch the hands. Yeah. I mean, I would actually, I might even place a bet that somebody, whether it's Apple or not, in the next couple of years will make some sort of hand tracking thing for Vision Pro because there's so much you can get out of that extra precision. So, but bottom line, he's got a product in the market. He wants to compete with Apple. I get it. Trust me, he's really thrilled that Apple is in this market. It lets him talk about the Quest 3, lets him sell people on the Quest 3 as a much more affordable alternative to the Vision Pro. It validates him in so many ways. There's nobody who's a bigger winner at the release of Vision Pro, regardless of the quality of the Vision Pro, than Mark Zuckerberg.
No, I admit I actually considered putting the Quest Pro on again, and I didn't, but I considered it.
I do think that Facebook could theoretically make more money this year from the Quest, or this year from the Quest, than Apple makes on the Vision Pro, because Apple can't make as many and they're way more expensive. And what they've done is they've created this shelf of, hey, VR is coming and we're doing all this stuff, but there's this huge amount of affordability underneath it, which is really good for Facebook.
A rising tide raises all boats.
Yeah, and I think that, if they had come in at $500, that'd be the end of Facebook. Like Facebook's little try at this, but that's, not mathematically possible. Again, I think it really comes back down to the ecosystem for both the developers and for the ecosystem is relatively simple for relatively easy for the developers to move into. I can say as someone who has developed for the Quest that's not quite as easy on that side to develop for. And the other side of it is for users who have really bought into the Apple ecosystem. It's it's a very different experience on the Quest of. You really have to think about what you're going to get, and it's all a new world, and it's not connected to anything else you're doing. The fact that while it may seem uncomfortable, like I haven't written a lot of emails on my Vision Pro, but I do a lot of texting while I'm in there because that means I don't have to leave. Like I'm sitting there in it. Someone texts me, I look over, I tap on it, I say something, and generally it's correct enough, and it sends it off, and I go back to what I was doing, and so I find that to be pretty compelling.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between like a $35 cheeseburger and a $10 cheeseburger, where like once you realize that, wow, these two, I'm the $35 one, the cheese is nicer and the grass-fed beef is kind of nicer, but gee, it's not like 3 times as nice as this $10. And now your $10 cheeseburger seems like a lot better than maybe you thought it was on its own. And until Apple and the developers can start to roll out experiences on the Vision Pro that are really solidly unique to that device, not just it can do this, but it can do it better. But here is something that this other platform is just not capable of. That's going to be something that they're going to have to deal with.
Wait till you have the $3,500 cheeseburger, Andy. That will change your idea of cheeseburgers forever.
Steven Spielberg comes and delivers it to you and hands you the best unproduced script for
it is the Steven Spielberger, actually. That's what it's called.
Instead of lettuce, it's gold.
Actually, Mark did make a point at the very end, which made me kind of think. He says that the Meta Quest platform is open compared to Apple's platform, which is closed. Does that
to him?
Yeah, to him.
Yeah. I mean, capital O and lowercase o. This is very lowercase o.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say that it's open, but in the sense that you do need to. I think to really operate it, I think you still need a Facebook account. So there's that.
Meta.
So
account.
that's for the user. That's not that open. So, but you still need the same thing with an Apple. So again, this is for if you're in an Apple ecosystem, it doesn't feel like it's closed. And again, you can develop pretty openly if you're a developer already, an Apple developer developing for the Vision Pro is a pretty soft jump, from one to the other. So we've talked to a lot of developers that are developing it because we're having some of them join us on the show, and we talked about it, and they've been pretty happy with the development process there. So I'm not sure. I think he just doesn't. Obviously Facebook doesn't like paying the 30%. So
Yeah, that's what they meant by open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's kind of making a pale shade of the Android argument, and even the Android argument it's open, but it's more open. And I'm not sure is the Quest even more open, but it doesn't really matter. I think that it's interesting that he's got an advantage right now in that he's had apps out there for a long time on this platform, and Apple is just getting started. But Apple's advantage is that they've got their ecosystem, including their developer ecosystem, and a lot of apps that can come straight over. And I would argue that that's one of the reasons that Apple made a $3,500 thing and called it a productivity tool, is that they know what apps they've got that can come over, and it makes more. And that's where they can beat what Meta is doing right now. But on the gaming side, Mark Zuckerberg's absolutely right. Like, they have a game library, and it is vastly superior and probably will be for a long time, especially given the controllers.
What do you say to people who say really the only good use of this thing would be gaming, and since Apple isn't promoting gaming, get the Quest? I mean, that isn't, I mean, it really is a gaming. It feels like gaming is the best use of this.
It's not. I mean, I think the entertainment stuff is better, and I think there's a question about the productivity stuff. If all you want to do is play games, you absolutely should buy a Quest 3. It's really good, and that's bottom line, right? But like I said, I've watched some movies on the Quest, but like with a third-party app and files that I have provided by ripping them from a Blu-ray. And so they need to do a better job with their media library. It still won't be as good a movie viewing experience as the Vision Pro, but it could be decent. And I think that that's a place where Meta needs to step up.
What if they made a deal with Movies Anywhere or somebody? That would solve that, right? Because then you'd have access to all the libraries.
Sure. Yeah,
I mean, there just needs to be more. There needs to be more stuff like that.
Yeah.
And after complaining about the I think I might have mentioned this last week, but after complaining about the avatar, I found myself spending an hour talking to someone over FaceTime through avatars on headset.
You get used to it.
And we, after about the first 10 minutes, I was totally used to it, looking at it, talking to him about it. We were handing back 3D models. Hey, look at this model, look at this model, look at this model, look at these things. And we're like sending them, just popping them over to each other to look at. And so I do think that there is a productivity argument there, especially when it comes to, the 3D, some of the 3D experiences I think are going to get a lot better. I have to admit that for me, as someone who does a lot of things where I'm visualizing things and people have to look at them in 3D, and it would make a lot more sense if they could walk around in them. The moment that in jig space that I could circle something in 3D, like going in front and behind the object and talk about it and do things like that, I was like, okay,
I stipulate there are experiences like that. There are some specialized experiences like that the VR helmet will never be beat. But those are fairly specialized. Watching a movie or playing a game is less so. If you want maybe Apple doesn't care if this is a mass appeal product. Maybe that's the answer.
At this price point, I think that there's some challenges there, but there's an awful lot of educational and sales opportunities. There's an awful lot of educational opportunities and marketing opportunities. I think that there's going to be a much larger draw if you go up to, there's some websites where you can start downloading all these apps. I mean, all these 3D models. And when you start imagining being able to look at the products, like for instance, I know that you make fun of me for this, but on Amazon, if I'm going to buy something for my house and it doesn't have a 3D model, I'm not going to, the chances of me buying it are almost zero, because like an 80% of the furniture, like I had to buy something a couple weeks ago, and I needed to buy it, and I was like, which shelf should I get? And I can just I can just have the shelf on my phone. It doesn't work on the Vision Pro yet, but on my phone, I can literally just have AR. It just smacks into my room, and I can make sure it's high enough, and I look at how it looks in the room, and I make decisions about it. I'm not going to, it gives it a huge inside advantage. It's not 100% chance I won't buy something I can't do that with, but it's pretty low if I'm buying it from Amazon, because Amazon has that built into the store, and I think you're going to see more and more things like that. I'd rather do it with my headset. That'd be a lot better. And so I think there's going to be a lot more as this gets a lot wider. I think you are going to see people use it more for education, more for marketing, more for, those types of things. So
yeah. Well, also for the first couple of years, it's an important. 2024 is still a critical year, and this is a critical product for Apple because this is going to help them design the product they know they can make in 5 years, the one that is actually mass market, the one that will have all the stuff that doesn't work for people fixed, removed, thrown away, the stuff that's irrelevant and people just didn't care about. That's parts off the list. What we're about, it's really the people who are spending $3,500 to $4,000. They really are pioneers here,
well,
and they're helping everybody who waited a couple of years to get a much better product.
And I think that we did a lot of R&D that never got to the public, but the R&D that we did of things like we built a virtual museum experience that you can just walk around in, and inside of that virtual experience you can sit there and walk up to sculptures, you can walk up to images, you can get all the things you would get with that little weird thing that they give you at the museum that you put in your ear. Like all of that stuff was reproduced virtually, and does it replace being in the same room? No, but if the thing's on tour and you get one chance to take a look at it and it doesn't come to your city, it's not a bad experience there. And so I think that those kinds of things of making them more accessible. And I think, accessibility, by the way, for all of these things is a huge factor, of things as we move forward, of people being able, who have limited mobility and limited sight, lots of things that it can help. It can help a lot of things there that would be very hard to do in the real world.
Yeah, there were a bunch of really nice articles this week or last week specifically about the accessibility written by people who use the accessibility features of everything. Stephen Aquino, who's one of the persons that I always look to when it comes to accessibility on the Apple platform, makes a couple of good points, some skeptical ones and some positive ones, including the fact that this is all one ecosystem means that the accessibility features that he uses on the iPhone, on the iPad, on the Mac are also being used on this device too, and that makes it really, really that makes it really helpful. But others are making the point that I think her name is Jim Knox. I couldn't find her first name off the post, but she's saying things about how like getting the device aligned on your face perfectly just so is a big issue. And if you have certain dexterity problems, putting that on yourself and making sure it is on your face exactly the right way is going to be a problem. But you're absolutely right. I'm very, very impressed that a lot of people who like Shelley Brisbane, who is extremely nearsighted, wrote a piece for 6 Colors. Another user who has only use of one eye. Again, you can simply tell the Vision Pro, oh, by the way, I'm going to be using this in monocular mode. Someone who doesn't have use of his arms, you can do the points and the clicks like with noises that you're making. It's a combination of things that Apple is doing a really great job of addressing, and other things that make me and some other people wonder, is this even addressable in a product like this, and what does that mean?
Yeah, and I think that Apple has the advantage of having having Apple TV. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how hard there's a huge opportunity there, and the question is, will they take advantage of it? Which is doing some scenes for the Apple TV, for the Apple Vision Pro from the many TV shows and movies that they're doing. We've already seen rumors or seen behind the scenes photos where we see those stereo, that R5, the Canon R5 inside of some kind of blimp or box that's been on sets. So, seeing immersive experiences. So immersive experiences from it. So again, it's not, we're going to do all of Ted Lasso in 180 degrees. But what if we did a locker scene or one of the field scenes or something else where, it's an add-on. It's not the replacement of it, but it's something that you can kind of find, or seen behind the scenes, or seen or models. Their Otoy released I think called the Archive Plus is on the headset, and it's like models of the Enterprise, those kinds of things, and the deck, and those kinds of and so I think that these add-ons also will be really interesting to see how they progress.
Let's take a little break, come back with more. We're talking about Apple, not just the Vision Pro, but that was our Vision Pro segment, which we'll probably have for the next month or two, and then everybody will lose interest and we can go on to more important things. I'm still skeptical. You've yet to convince me.
Sure. No. Good reason for skepticism still.
Andy Anako, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell will be back as soon as I tell you about our sponsor, Wix Studio. Debate time. Who gets more out of Wix Studio, designers or devs? Well, First of all, if you don't know about Wix Studio, it's the web platform offering the flexibility agencies and enterprises need to deliver bespoke sites hyper efficiently. But now back to the debate. For designers, you can create fully responsive websites starting with a blank canvas, or choose a template for any layout, or tweak per pixel with your CSS. If no code's your thing, and you just like to move fast, there's also a ton of smart features like native no-code animations and responsive AI that adjusts every breakpoint. We did try that. It's super cool. For devs, Wix Studio offers a powerful set of homegrown web APIs and REST APIs, so you can quickly integrate, extend, and write custom scripts in a VS Code-based IDE. Nice, huh? Alongside an AI code assistant, too. Plus, it's all wrapped in rock-solid, auto-maintained infrastructure. AI that writes your code or fixes your breakpoints, fully responsive editor, or a zero-setup dev environment, no-code animations, or no-code animations. Designers or developers, search Wix Studio and find out for yourself. WIX, Wix Studio, or just go to wix.com/studio, wix.com/studio, and click on the link, or click on the link we have on our show notes. You can find out more. Wix.com/studio. We thank him so much for supporting MacBreak Weekly. Other Apple news. I guess it's much less fun than Vision Pro. We have to talk about the EU. EU hit Apple with a €500 million penalty. This is not over the Digital Markets Act. This is not over the App Store. Well, I guess it sort of is. It's over Apple's music. It was a complaint brought by Spotify back in 2018 saying, you're oughta. Apple has a pre-installed music app. They don't have to pay 30% for the songs. This is inherently anti-competitive. The EU agreed and has now fined them €500 million, which is not an insignificant fine. This is, by the way, this is not official. This is the Financial Times saying that you're going to hear about this in a week or two. But what do you think? Apple will appeal, no doubt.
Yeah, it's too bad because this is like there are really deep and delicate discussions we can have about what antitrust regulation should do, and if companies like Apple should be punished by virtue of the fact that, look, we have a very successful product, and one of the reasons why it's so successful is that we keep a tight rein on making sure that things can't go very, very wrong. And so it's sad when something like this happens because of what I consider to be some of the dumbest things, some of the dumbest App Store policies, where, again, it's not that, oh, well, we're suing you. You have to pay $500 million because you're not letting Spotify do this. It's because you are forcing every person who has an app on your store to not tell their own customers about better offers and better deals, whereas you can do whatever the hell you want for subscribers of your own service. And it seems like something that really does need to be revisited. There are lots of very, very good arguments about lots of other aspects of things the EU is going after Apple for, but this is the one area that of the App Store where it just seems like Apple is being chintzy and a chiseler and just really scroogey and all those other like bad timey movie people. It's like, just give up.
Stunk, right?
It's not 2008 anymore. Just, deal with it. You got how many billions of? Sorry, go ahead.
I think the worst part of Apple's whole kind of control, and we've had some very nuanced discussions here about why Apple exerts control and why they say that it's good for users and why it is good for users to a certain extent. But the ones that kill me are when Apple has decided to compete and also apply these rules to a competitor, thereby making it an unequal playing field. And best examples that I've got are with Amazon for books. They start Apple Books, iBooks, and they don't need to cut in a middleman for 30% for every book sale, but Amazon does, so Amazon can't do that. And then the other is music, right, where they launch Apple Music as a competitor to Spotify and say, well, Spotify on our platform, you have to follow these rules, but Apple doesn't have to follow those rules because they're the platform owner. And that's, I think, the worst of it is when Apple either already has or launches a competitive service that gives them a huge advantage because they are the home field platform player. And, this is one of those.
They can't stop thinking of Spotify as no. All these millions of people that are using our phones with your app, they're not Spotify customers. You have no right to have any access to your own customers because they're not your customers. They're Apple customers, and we're going to protect our Apple customers from their irresponsible way that customers might have of using a competing product. We care about our customers that much.
Apple had a larger fine from France a couple of years ago, a 1.1 billion euro fine, which they appealed, also for anti-competitive behavior, and it was revised down to 372 million euros.
So Apple's going to peel a couple bills off the outside and hand it to them.
It is. Apple could reasonably say even $500 million. It's the cost of doing business. We're doing pretty fine.
How much can an antique guitar cost? Just smash it. It'll look much better.
Exactly. What is our insurance?
They'll complain. We'll just pay them off. It's never about the thing. It's about the money. Trust me.
There is. I mean, this is about as clear a case as you could have of putting your thumb on the scale by Apple, or is it? I'll give Alex a chance.
Well, I think that it's just a matter of I think the issue really, I think that where Apple's coming from is that they invested heavily and built a superior platform for this. It's their platform, and they should be allowed to operate it. And so they are not a monopoly of the phone ecosystem. People can this claim only works if you say that the iPhone is its own ecosystem, doesn't look like every other phone that looks exactly like it. So every other phone looks like the iPhone now. Apple has especially in the EU, has a much lower percentage. So I think that their argument is more about from a percentage perspective. I think there's a lot of things that Apple does related to how the store is closed and everything else that does have to do that's much more user-centric and not necessarily developer-centric. But in this case, where they're talking about the charging, I think that Apple's saying, well, we built the entire thing from scratch. This has been the deal since people got in, and now the people are making, and again, this whole argument is a very aristocratic argument. This is all about rich companies wanting more money from other rich companies. This is not a fight for the little guy, from anybody's perspective. And of course, the EU is more cavalier because none of their companies are in the top 10. so they're much more like whatever, And so I think that it's. But I do think that Apple will continue to have to do this, but they're going to stretch it out because it's worth billions to stretch it out. And they don't agree with it. Again, you can look at it as what's the right thing to do or whatever, but the bottom line is they have an opinion and EU has an opinion, and they'll keep on scrapping it out because they're making billions while they scrap it out. And I think they fundamentally just don't agree because I think and I think that there is a valid case for the fact that, they built the house that everybody is living on. I mean, Spotify wouldn't exist in any way, shape, or form without the iPhone. It wasn't going to ever make it in a desktop. Like as a desktop app, Spotify was never going to make it. That wasn't going to be.
Facebook, this is a related story. For a long time, I guess, was selling boosted posts on Facebook. And they were doing it in on the Facebook app on the iPhone. Apple updated its review guidelines in 2022 to say that that should use the in-app purchase system, giving Apple 30%. Facebook's resulting response was, we'll mark that fee up 30% when they purchase it through the Facebook or Instagram apps for iOS. We'll offset it. I think actually Spotify does something similar, right? If you buy a Spotify subscription on the iPhone, it costs more than if you buy it through their website or somewhere else. Apple's response is, we've always required the purchases of digital goods and services within apps to use in-app purchases. Boosting, which allows an individual or organization to pay to increase the reach of a post or profile as a digital service. So, of course, an in-app purchase is required.
Well, that's that then.
That's that. That's that. And so if you say, so what doesn't affect me? Well, it does if you have to pay 30% more for goods and services purchased through Apple.
So, I mean, I don't entirely agree with with what Alex said about Spotify, but this is an example where I'm actually kind of completely on board, which is
well, that's only because it's Meta.
If you want to use Apple's, well, I mean,
that's true.
I have not a lot of love for Spotify either, honestly, but this is a pure digital product that exists inside an app, inside the ecosystem, that is doing nothing other than essentially boosting a post. Like, this is as pure a digital transaction as you could possibly have. It's not even a subscription maintenance or a relationship maintenance. It's literally like, I want to boost this post, boom, and you're using Apple's system to do it. Now, I know that there are some counter arguments about, like, well, there's no other system you're allowed to do. That's true, but you can also go to the web and do it, and you're choosing to do it in the Facebook app. And so if Apple's saying, well, this is a pure digital transaction in an app, so we want our 30%, and Facebook
That's a
says,
convenience fee.
Okay,
yeah,
it's a convenience fee for the user at that point, right, to stay in there and not go to the website. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made. I'm less worried about that one.
Is it reasonable for Meta to pass the cost along to the consumer?
I think so.
Yep. Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
right.
100%.
I mean, at what's Meta's profit on that too? What's their margin on that? It's infinite, right? It's 100%, right? So like we're divvying up essentially free,
right,
to the corporation.
It's different for Spotify because they pay for the music. They have to, and they're being, frankly, constantly pressured by the music labels.
And I agree with Alex that there is this argument that Apple built it and so Apple should benefit that. I agree to a certain extent, but I do think that at some point you do have to draw a line and say, we can't have it be that whoever owns one of the two dominant operating systems for smartphones in the world, those are company towns, and there's company town A and there's company town B. And so everything on Apple's platforms must be Apple, or go through Apple, or pay a tithe to Apple, and everything on Google's platforms must be Google, and you have to pay a tithe to Google. And I think that's what's behind a lot of at least the motivations of the EU is, should it not at some point in the process of that ecosystem, should there not be some competition that goes on? And I think that's where the crux of the argument can happen. Well, that's how I feel about Apple, like going to the trouble of building a competing service for books or for music, and then having rules for them, because like it's not like Apple pays 30% to a mysterious middleman somewhere. They just keep the money. They just keep the money, and Spotify doesn't.
Well, I do think that when someone gets to a point where they have 75% of the global market or 80% of the global market, you have a monopoly issue that starts to become up, but I think that at 25% of the market, which is about what Apple's global market is, it's a lot bigger in the United States, 50%, but it's 25% of the global market. People still have a lot of choices about where they want to go. And, most likely Samsung is going to split out from Google. And so there'll be, other ones that are coming out at that point. And so I think that, again, I do think that that's the case. But I think we have to be very careful of starting to decide governments can just start clipping people, clipping companies that have been, put a lot of effort in, because a lot of it has to do with, Apple is a much more of an adult, like when it comes to how they run products out, and everybody else's products have been substandard, and that's why there's a lot of other stores that have been out there that didn't work. And it's because the way that they build their products often at least lack taste. If not, like when you look at it, when you open them up, the way that the interface works and the way it, and a lot of the stuff is frustrating. Apple has won on that, on taste for a long time. And I'm still, when I open up Windows, I'm still like, taste is still missing. It's still, it does the thing, but it's still ugly and it's still wonky, compared to what the Apple does.
Well, I think you acknowledge that it's a matter of personal taste. Like I use Spotify instead of Apple Music because I just think the Spotify interface is better. I'll take the quick access to what it is that I came there to listen to over the higher quality music, even though I'm kind of upset that Spotify has not deemed it possible to get like the higher quality music anyway. But for me, it's just that there are times where I just want to ask, figuratively, Apple, like, what are you doing to earn this 30%? Or how are you protecting consumers and creating a better product by refusing to allow a developer to tell you, oh, by the way, I can't afford the 30% tariff. I don't have 30. If I wish that I were making a 30% margin on the service that I'm making, but if you come to my website, I will be able to sell it to you at a much better price. And Apple's saying, nope, you can't do that. We're not going to allow you to do that. And if you do sell it at your own site for a better price, you have to sell at the same price through our apps. Like, that is, to me, bullying behavior. And I do respect your opinion about it's. A lot of this are really about antitrust. It really does come to these simple but baffling questions like, what does constitute a market and what constitutes a monopoly of that market? So I absolutely hear you when you're saying that the Apple is by far not the number one mobile phone operating system out there, and by virtue of that fact, there are lots of options out there. But that is a little bit like saying, oh well, yeah, there's one family that owns every single business in this town and basically also owns the railway and the bus line going out of this town.
But there are other towns.
Exactly.
Move to another town.
Just pack up, sell your house, move to another neighborhood, make new friends, and basically having to switch from an iPhone to an Android phone on that kind of a point is not a frictionless thing. And so I don't think that's a slam dunk answer to your position, but I think it's part of the discussion.
We should also, I want to clarify, if you've been a Spotify subscriber for a year, it's 15%. It's that first year that's 30%. And so there's a churn penalty, but
to be clear, by the way,
I agree with Andy. I think one of the arguments we often have in monopoly discussions is, are you using your power in place A to exert power in place B? And there is an argument to be made, at least, that saying you need to change your phone operating system because you want to buy books differently or listen to music differently is kind of an extreme example of how much you have to do in order to see this, and that there's some competition there. But I agree. This is why I think different countries are approaching this thing differently, because is this that? Should they intervene? And it is a duopoly, really. I mean, it's Google's rules plus Apple's rules are effectively the whole smartphone market. So, yeah.
By the way, that 15% I misunderstood for a long time isn't that the Spotify app has been on the store for a year. It's that you have been subscribing for a year.
Yes.
So every new subscriber pays 30% until they've been a subscriber for a year.
Year 2 and onward, if you keep your subscription to anything in the App Store, is 15%. It's just the first year that's 30%. Or individual transactions, right? Individual transactions, if you're not a small business in that small business program, all that stuff is 30%. But the year 2 of all subscriptions in Apple's system are now 15%, have been for
and some will say, besides that, they will also say, well, Spotify doesn't allow you to buy on the iPhone anymore. And that's precisely why, because they don't want to give Apple. Actually, I think Spotify used to charge $13 if you bought it on the iPhone and $10 a month if you bought it on their website. So they were actually passing that along to the customer. But I think that the real issue is, if Apple does this, isn't that a disadvantage for Spotify?
Because what it's doing is it's saying, pretend that there's no website and pretend that nobody can ever sign up for your app, because we can't put a web link in that says you can't subscribe here, go to Spotify to subscribe. And Apple says, no, we can't do that. That's too terrifying and dangerous to let people know that a website exists.
You can't even say it's cheaper elsewhere. You can't you can't imply in any way that the $12.99 you're paying for Spotify per month would be $3 less if you did it somewhere else.
But regardless, saying just not having a link to your website because that's too dangerous. And Kindle works the same way, right? Where Amazon's not supposed to even say you could go to Amazon and buy books. They're like, whoop, how are you going to get some books? I don't know. Amazon's signing out.
Apple's regular excuse is, well, security. But this is the second time in as many weeks that Apple has allowed a fake app on the App Store that was taking people's money. Before, it was a fake LastPass app that was LastPass but had the same icon. Now, and by the way, Apple's taken it down, but it was there for a while. It was approved, a fake crypto wallet on the App Store. Apple has removed it. But you got to wonder if Apple's saying, well, we'll see how much more secure we are. Why is this stuff getting through?
Well, because developers complain if it takes too long. Like, Apple, so develop, that's why it gets, some of the stuff gets through because Apple has to balance it. Nothing's ever going to be 100% secure, but if Apple tightens too far, then they get complaints on, hey, it's taking too long to get this through because it takes time to get these things through. And if they go too fast, some of those go through. I think that it's I think that it's hard to argue that it's not a more secure platform. I mean, it's definitely not a completely secure platform though.
Okay, it's
true.
More secure, but not completely secure.
Yeah.
And Apple certainly would want you not to make it less secure by putting a link to your website in your app.
Yes,
that would be terrible.
Well, I think that also I think that there's a ease of use thing that affects the users. So like I think that like I don't subscribe if I get a link to if I get something that I have to pay for externally. I tend to just not do it anymore.
Right.
Like I did it for a little while, but I can't remember the passwords and I get mad.
Convenience
like
fee.
as a user. So from Apple's perspective, it's a lower quality experience. Like I don't subscribe to Spotify anymore because it required me. It expired for some reason, my credit card or whatever. And then it said, oh, you can't do it. And I was like, nah, I'll just stick with the free version.
That's exactly Spotify's point.
I know, but they pushed
just
me off
made
the thing.
their
And I was
point.
like, no, but I'm just saying that I would happily pay 30% more. Like I just don't care. Like I don't care because to me, I don't care about that. Like all I care about is that everything sits inside that ecosystem, that I don't have to remember what my credit card is. And I don't have to remember, like I haven't put Disney on my Vision Pro because I don't know what the password is. So I watch it on other things and I'm already considering like with both Disney and Netflix, like, do I really need these? Because they're outside that ecosystem, where on Macs is not. I bought it.
It's so true. I last night almost bought some Instagram underwear, but they didn't have Apple Pay on the site, so I just stopped. And so I agree that's that convenience.
Oh, I'm brutal. Like if they don't have Apple Pay, like Home Depot is like I almost stopped going to Home Depot because Home Depot has a little thing, no Apple Pay. I'm like, what tells us?
What do
tell
they
me
do
that
instead?
you are stuck in the past instead of go to Peony. Oh no, you have to go to
give them a
Peony
credit card.
Is another.
No, I'm just wondering
store
what you
that's
do
far superior.
at Home Depot. They take what?
Yeah, you have to
credit
take a credit card.
cards?
You can take a credit card, but you can't. It
Can't
literally
tap it.
says on the register.
No
I'm
Apple
like,
Pay.
what says you're stuck in the past? Tell me that you're stuck in the past
Right.
without telling me that you're stuck in the past. No Apple Pay. I'm just like, what? So,
Supreme Court has given Apple a victory in the VirnetX lawsuit. VirnetX, widely agreed to be a non-practicing entity, aka patent troll, had been suing Apple for 13 years. Back in 2012, they sued over a patent related to FaceTime VPNs and iMessages that VirnetX said Apple infringed. And of course, Apple paid a $454 million settlement to them in 2020. And then another lawsuit, a jury in East Texas, there's your hint, awarded VirnetX $500 million in damages. Apple appealed, of course, and was awarded a ruling in March of last year by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit that the second set of patents, the $500 million payment, were invalid. VirnetX then appealed to the United States Supreme Court. Obviously, they weren't paying Clarence Thomas enough, so the Supreme Court has declined to hear the $503 million case.
I was about to say he must have been on some oligarch's yacht when they're voting on that.
Did you see Jon
Well, to
Stewart
even hear it,
on
though,
Sunday?
it doesn't take him-
Holy, not Jon Stewart, John Oliver. Holy cow. Who did he give it to? But you know what? His offer I thought was very good. I want to see if Clarence Thomas takes it. At the end of the show, John Oliver says, here's a ironclad document that if you retire right now from the U.S. Supreme Court, I will pay you $1 million a year until you or I die. I guess it's coming out of John Oliver's pocket.
Yeah.
And then he goes backstage and there's a giant Prevost top-of-the-line land yacht RV.
Like a Foo Fighters grade, like tour bus,
like the best.
$2 million tour bus.
And he said, I will throw this in as well.
I was looking for some sort of a follow-up because I know that John Oliver doesn't have like $18 million like set aside for this. Like what happens? Did he find an insurer to like underwrite this to say?
I think it's a pretty safe bet that Clarence Thomas will not take him up on this.
Well, he's got sticky fingers for the grift. We also know that. So, like,
he can make a lot more than $1 million a year as a Supreme Court justice.
okay, good point. Well, he
Let's be honest.
could probably make more than $5 million a year as an independent consultant.
I think it's just
for any evil organization that cares to solicit him.
It's a bargaining chip for Thomas. Justice Thomas just goes to one of his oligarchs and says, I don't know. I got this offer from John Oliver. I don't know. And he'll get a much nicer motor coach, I'm sure. Anyway, I didn't mean to get political.
Sorry,
anyway, the Supreme. So let's edit that all out, and we'll just say the Supreme Court denied cert, and which means Apple's won. It's over.
Yep.
There's no world
more
court to go to. You can't go to Europe on this one. It's done.
And remember
nothing left to do but throw eggs at their car.
Right.
You don't need a majority you don't need a majority in the Supreme Court to have it seen. So I think it's like 3 or 4 justices have to. So it's not just Clarence Thomas. It's a lot of.
I understand. Right. I understand.
No. Yeah. So.
I shouldn't take.
We're still a little bit salty over the Anita Hill thing. That's all.
It's just that you lost. I mean, they lost by a lot.
Yeah.
If the Supreme Court's not willing to see it.
It's a patent.
It means
it's a patent troll. It's ridiculous. Yeah. All right, little break, and we will continue on with our wonderful panel. You're watching MacBreak Weekly, brought to you this week by Collide with a K. Now, when you remember to last time you took a trip, when you go through airport security, there's the first line where you go, and the TSA agents, they look at your ID and they look at your ticket and they go, okay, you go on through. And then, but you don't just go right to the plane. You then go to a machine that scans your bag. Well, the same thing happens in enterprise security. We're not talking passengers and luggage. We're talking end users and their devices. Unfortunately, it may not happen as well. These days, most companies, while they're pretty good at the authentication part, that first part, where they check your identity, but user devices, they often just go right through authentication without getting inspected. In fact, 47% of all companies allow unmanaged, untrusted devices to access their network. Now, that's bad news if that's your company. It means an employee can log on from a laptop that has a firewall turned off or hasn't been updated in 6 months or, has a unpatched version of Plex running on it. Or worse, that laptop could belong to a bad actor using employee credentials. Collide solves the device trust problem because Collide ensures no device can log into your Okta-protected apps unless it also passes your security checks. Plus, you can use Collide on devices without MDM, like your Linux fleet, contractor devices, every BYOD phone and laptop in your company. Collide is such a good idea. Visit collide.com/MacBreak. Watch a demo. See how it works. KOLIDE.com/MacBreak. This is brilliant. Collide.com/MacBreak. We thank him so much for supporting MacBreak Weekly. Actually, speaking of court cases, this is kind of peripheral to Apple, but Cox Communications was being sued by the music industry. Sony, Warner, and Universal all said it's Cox's fault that their customers were pirating music. Cox initially lost in court, and there was a $1 billion jury verdict. But an appeals court has thrown out that verdict. Not that the record labels don't need the $1 million. They acknowledge that. The U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, the Fourth Circuit, ruled that the amount of damages was not justified and there should be a new trial to determine the appropriate amount. Not worth $1 billion.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. I remember the original. I remember that case, and I seem to remember that it really was based on the fact that, yes, you tried nominally to stop piracy, but you didn't prevent it, and therefore you're on the hook for we need to sue somebody. We're not going to sue 12,000 individuals for you got the money for it, and I kind of agree with them. It's like unless you're egregious, unless you're promoting your 1 gigabit like home service, saying look how fast you can download the entire Beatles catalog in seconds and high quality. And without going through iTunes, then I think they got them, but they don't got them.
They don't got the money either, probably, because you know how the cable industry is really suffering these days.
Because they got too big a heart. People call them and say,
care.
hey, I can't afford, I really need gigabit, but I can't afford those fees. They say, hey, you know what? How about $5 a month? Can you handle $5? And
They do it all the time.
I keep telling them. I used to go to school with Ernie Cox.
Oh, yeah.
And he always had like old hand-me-down shoes. Like the family is just that way.
I will. This is the public service announcement. Is once your service runs out of its term, the 1 year or 2 year term, you should not sign up again until you shake them down.
Oh yeah, always shake them down.
I went from 150 for whatever 30 by 20 to 110 for 1 gig by 50 or something like that with Comcast. And as soon as I get Frontier in here, I will shake them down again. I'll probably keep both of them because I do a lot of work out of here. But don't feel bad.
Don't feel bad because there's
a lot of margin.
They don't have to pay that billion. Yeah. So there's a little extra cash in Ernie Cox's pocket.
There you go. Their drop-offs at the food bank, I'm sure they're going to triple now. And that rusted old truck that Ernesto Cox came to this country with, opening his little fruit stand and local broadband company.
All right, one of you, I don't know who, but one of you put this article in. Rice is not included in Apple's official guidance for a wet iPhone.
I put that in.
So don't do it, and don't put it in the oven or microwave either.
That Apple put out an announcement that said, "Don't put your products in rice to dry them out."
You idiots!
It's a pretty common thing that people will say rice. Now, I will admit that I have desiccant specifically if I drop something.
That's
better.
A little
bag of it that I put it in. And so I think that I didn't dig into it too deeply, but the challenge really is that you can get. There's a lot of things on, especially white rice, that will not be good for your phone. That can get sticky and become kind of cement and ruin your inputs and fill your speakers and all kinds of other things. So if your product is too wet, or if it was leaking, it could create a goo that turns into cement that's inside of the holes inside. I'm sure this is what Apple was going to, is like, dudes, what are you doing?
Don't bring in your white rice dried iPhones.
Don't microwave it or put it in the oven. That was the other.
Don't dry your iPhone using an external heat source or compressed air. Don't insert a foreign object. How many times have I heard that? Such as a cotton swab or a paper towel into the connector.
Only use it to clean the outside of the connector. Don't go inside the canal.
Don't do it.
It's as wise for the phone as it was for us humans.
Yeah, never put anything bigger than your elbow in your iPhone, or smaller.
But I will say that I was on the phone and cleaning my pool and fell in. And I will say that all I did was take my phone and I just set it on a towel and left it there for a day.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Working fine.
Yeah,
like it was.
It's pretty mind-boggling. So I want to follow up on this desiccant. After you open up the thing with the vitamins with the little desiccant packet in it, is it still packets. You can still use it? It's not all full of.
Just don't eat it. Don't eat it.
What?
Don't eat it. I understand that much.
It says it all over. Don't eat it. So there's a couple different ones. I have a bag. When I see desiccants, I have a Ziploc bag that I just throw them in together, and just throw them in. And generally they never absorb as much as they're capable of when they're put into a box. So you can just throw them into things if you want to keep things dry. You can also get, I don't know where I got it, but I have this jar of desiccant that is, I think it turns blue when it's wet and gray when it's not. And you put it back in the oven. Then you just pour it into the oven. They're slightly larger balls, and you pour them into the oven, heat them, and then they get rid of all their moisture.
Not too hot.
Put them
what
back
temperature
in the jar.
do you recommend?
I don't remember. I think
350. No, 250 is probably enough.
No, I think it's like 200 or something.
Low,
it's just to let them dry out.
Yeah,
it's low, but it's I can't remember. I followed whatever the instructions are on the jar. I don't have it right in front of me, but those work pretty well. You can get these jars of them, and they're bigger balls of something else. They're not silica, and you can heat them and get them dried out again, and then you put them in there. And we use them to put them in with equipment because they're larger, because we actually want them to be larger so that they don't get into crevices. So yeah.
And if you don't happen to have those handy when you fall into the pool, there's if you kitty litter, there's a kind of crystal kitty litter that's not clay, it's not powder, so it won't infiltrate, but they are actually crystals of silica. You have to look for the packaging to find out what's on it. That stuff is pretty easy to use. If you can put it into cheesecloth, that's even better. But I have actually done that once, like years ago, and it didn't cause any problems. The problem with like these home remedies is that like if they don't work, oh well, look, what do you expect? I dropped in the water anyway. If they do work, it's not like you're going to expect that, gee, if I had done absolutely nothing at all, it also would have just worked out just fine if I just simply had left it turned off until it all dried out. But anecdotally, I'm
going to go buy 60 pounds of these premium orange indicating silica gel desiccant beads. And then we should have them in the studio, right?
They look tasty. Should I eat them?
They're very
You can see why they put that warning. Those really do look like they'd be good. And put them in your rice.
Exactly.
That'd be a battle between.
They're like, they look like a kura.
They change to dark green when 50-60% absorb with moisture. So once they get dark green, then you pop them in the oven at 200 to 250, or microwave for 10 minutes at defrost mode. Don't use over 250 in the oven. We should have some of these here, John.
Please consider what these crystals might have absorbed before you decide to put it in an oven that you're going to be cooking food in later. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, really? You have some experience with this?
No. I'm just saying that like if it's used for all kinds of spills and all kinds of moisture, I'm not sure if I would like to make my morning Pop-Tarts in a toaster oven that had like taken swamp water from the bottom of a bass boat. I'd be fine with losing the phone, frankly.
Okay, that's a good point.
Well, depending on whether the phone or the countertop oven, the toaster oven were more expensive.
Did we mention last week that Apple has apparently shooting the NBA Slam Dunk contest for Vision Pro?
No, that just happened.
That's right. How could we have mentioned it?
Yeah,
there it is.
Funny. I actually got a tweet from my friend Will Carroll, injury expert on Twitter, who had the same still that is now been turned into various stories and various
I should
places.
go to his original tweet. Is what I should.
There's
do.
a little binocular
Let's go to the tweet. Injury expert on Twitter. That's his handle.
Yeah, he's a sports writer who writes about mostly about injuries. And
he's like the king of the DL
stuff.
List. Is that really his?
Yeah, he's got Under the Knife is the name of his newsletter. Anybody who's interested in sports and fantasy sports should check Will out. He's really smart. But he's also really interested in the idea of using things like Vision Pro as a future of sports entertainment. And he and I have been talking about this, and we tried to we were talking about spotting the little kiosks in the Alicia Keys video. And he's the guy I was talking about like, can we figure out when they shot that baseball shot for their demo reel of immersive video? And we figured out it was a Friday night baseball game that Apple was already at,
nice.
But we couldn't quite spot the binocular, the stereo cameras. But he saw that shot and he was like, aha, that is, there's probably more than one there, but that was at the slam dunk competition.
That's a tiny little unit. Yeah.
Is a stereo recording unit.
Most likely, it probably is a little bigger than it looks, but it's most likely when I saw it there, it looks like the R5. The Canon R5 is like the go-to.
It's inside an enclosure.
Degrees.
You're right. You could see there's a DSLR or whatever inside, a mirrorless inside there.
The little box.
Yeah.
I think they're hiding it to not show what it actually is, but that looks exactly like an R5.
Yeah.
And
that's just the little lenses.
So.
Except aren't they going to catch way too much of this screen right here?
Yeah. I mean, I think the question is whether they're moving that out or in.
Right they roll it out.
In its current position, I don't think that's a great place.
Also, doesn't the guy in the middle look like he's on a green screen? He's just being projected in? Yeah.
That does not look real. It's very odd. But we've had issues where a lot of times you have you put those back there when they're playing until you need it, and the reason for that is that you don't want to get hit by a basketball, and so those are shielding it. And then when we've done some 360 and 180 stuff at NBA games, and they're kind of touchy about those being seen as well. So when you need it, you kind of pull it up and get it to where into the position that it needs to be in. That side position, I don't know if is a great one. I think that there's probably the hard part with any of these sports and why MLS is so important to Apple is every time you'd want to do something interesting in a sport, the negotiation because broadcast is where all the money is, the negotiation of using your little device inside of their ecosystem is like, well, we'll see. We'll see what we'll give you to do that. The NBA, I think during the All-Stars is a lot more aggressive. They had an LED floor.
That floor was wild. Whoa.
Yeah.
Very strange.
I'm not sure. I think that's okay. But anyway,
how did that affect play? I kept wondering. That must mess up with your mind. The fact that it's glowing and that it's changing as you're. Oh,
the question I have is that, like, how much can you see it when you're on the floor? Because it could be something that you don't really see very well at that angle, and so so it may not actually, because it didn't seem like it was affecting anybody when you watch them play. So it did feel like it should. It should totally freak them out, but it didn't seem like it was doing anything. And so, but the NBA is testing that. The NBA is testing, both the NBA and NFL and Major League Baseball to a little bit. Major League Baseball is probably the least innovative of the bunch. But the other, what they're really innovative is MLB figured out how to stream games better than anyone else in the world. So what they figured out is how to deliver their product reliably to everyone all the time at every game, and let you, and their interface for that is great. But what they don't change gameplay that much,
right?
Except for speeding it up, which I don't think is the right direction. But but football, NFL, and NBA are always trying to figure out the next thing, and so I think that stereo. So MLS, you can see it right in that little demo for the Vision Pro. They put a stereo camera right over top of the net, and you can see the players playing, and that's a pretty. If you're going to pick a space, the net is always the place you go because that's where all the action is, and so I think that's why it's really important for Apple to have MLS and have complete control over that broadcast, because they can now innovate with those cameras, every year, all year, every game, without having to talk to anybody about it.
Free MLS subscription last year from somebody, a phone company or something. And I've been bugged ever since by Apple TV saying, "You want to watch a soccer game, don't you? You want to watch a soccer game? I know you want to watch."
Here's the funny thing:
how do I get rid of that?
Even if you don't pay for it, you get bugged. Even if you don't pay, it's a whole shelf in the Apple TV Plus. They have to stop doing
that. That's awful.
It's
awful.
It's there.
By the way, this is the just in case you want to start shooting some spatial video. This is the camera, the Canon EOS R5, $3,000.
There's a,
and then you need this lens though, right? The $2,000. f2.8L dual fisheye. Is this what you use for the VR system? Oh, he's getting it. He's setting it up. Get ready. Alex is suddenly going to have dimensionality. Oh,
yeah, hold on.
He doesn't know what we're saying. He didn't have his ears in.
Yeah, I was like, my ears are out. So this is the R5 here. So this is probably it. So this is probably what they're.
Yeah, if you look at it, it looks exactly like what it looks like. Yeah,
it looks exactly like that. And so it's a pretty small little camera.
You've got a rig on that may probably don't have in.
Often, for most of us, as soon as you buy a camera, you buy an external rig because it protects it from falling, as well as you tend to attach a lot of things to it and so on and so forth. But so what this does is this puts two 4K semicircles onto one 8K sensor. That's why the R5 is so interesting. Now it won't do live, but it does record. And again, I think that if you look at the Alicia keys, you probably will see something that has almost an identical orientation. I think that, I don't have any inside information, but I think that this is the obvious.
And it's only $5,000 all in. I remember what you paid for that Osmo or whatever it was. The
Ozo. I have one back there.
Yeah, I know.
There's
it's on your shelf.
Somewhere. That was the first one was $60,000. The next two were $30,000 each, and the last three were $7,500 each. So and I paid them all off. So it was they all got paid off in production, so it was fine. But I think that there's other ways to do it. So there's there's Raptors, so using RED cameras, and those can deliver live. And then you have to remember that Apple bought NextVR, so they have the patents and the tools and the engineers to probably build their own cameras. I don't think that we haven't seen anything like that, but they have the internal capacity to do a lot there too.
Nice. How fun.
I love the idea of that LED cord, because the next step of that is not only does it mean that you can change your cord design by the second, let alone sort of between. And apparently the company that designed it, originally their realization, they built glass courts that can last for like 70 years. And then they said, hey, we can put stuff under this. And their first thought was just, we could put screens under it so that when it's a volleyball game, it'll have the lines for volleyball.
Right.
And basketball, we can put the 3-point line. And then somebody said, you could
put ads on it.
Have you seen LEDs? We could put, but the idea that they actually are talking about like using, you use those the multiple cameras that already mark everybody's place on the court, and you can start doing things like showing the route that the player takes coming up the court behind them as they're going, or showing all of the shots, all the 3-point shots that have been made and while they're playing, and then they make the shot. Like it's this, but it's just, and it's real. This is not a VR overlay or anything. It's like literally embedded in the court. That's hilarious. As long as it's not too distracting to the players, that could be super awesome for fans.
When I saw that court for the first time, it reminded me of like a really cool a really cool thing that the Flying Karamazov brothers, the juggling troupe, did in collaboration with the MIT Media Lab, where they had cameras basically tracking 5 jugglers' positions in real time on the stage, and they also had the stage mark so they could put it like again wherever they are. They had translucent juggling balls that had radio receivers inside them and could change color, and so. What they had, one of the things that they had set up for this to do, one of the main things they had set up for this to do, is for the computer to basically make up puzzles and challenges for the jugglers to solve on the fly. Like you've probably seen like the Karamazov or other jugglers where they're just basically in a circle and they're like basically juggling pins and throwing things to each other. But basically on the fly, like, oh, this ball in my hand changed from green to red. That means that Smerdyakov has to catch it. No one else can catch it. So he has to move himself into the circle. And so it suddenly made me think about, obviously this is not something that should be added to NBA rules, but there would be a wonderful set of games that says, oh, by the way, if you're on a red circle, you are not eligible to receive the ball. So you thought that you're going to be passing to him, but you're not going to have to. So if you're in the red circle, you may as well just move into a better position, or a computer that will actually coach you and say, you're not open here, but if you go to this spot, I'm marking for you. All this sort of stuff that could be an evolution of new games I would love to see with something like this.
Yeah, we've talked about, I scanned my family has a golf course in Pennsylvania, and we scanned the whole golf course because the idea was we could play other games with AR. Like you could play other games eventually where you're playing a game that's on the golf course, but the rules are different. And they're, like if you hit in this area or you hit in this area, you get more points or whatever it is. But you could do a lot of things that are like much different than the average game. But I think that the other thing that you don't think about until you're at a court and they start doing things like this, because we've done some where they're doing projections against the court. Which way is up? So half of the audience is going to see it upside down. Right. So you have to kind of think about which way. And typically the way up is the side that has the television cameras. Mm-hmm. So there's one side that has the concrete for all the television cameras. And that's usually the upside. But oftentimes the other place that this is going to be huge is going to be for the halftime. Halftimes, timeouts, all that stuff. Yeah. They're just going to go crazy with it because, for a lot of the teams, in the teams that will put these courts in first will be the teams that don't win very much because they're the ones that specialize in making sure that being there is incredible because they don't winning is not why you're going. You're going for the experience. You're going to see LeBron or you're going to see or you're just going to have a great time at the thing. And so they're actually way better at creating like when the Kings were doing really well, it was kind of like a double whammy because they're really, really good at making it fun to go to the case because they hadn't won a lot. And then when they started winning, it was actually really, packed, so I think that the courts will be really interesting for the audience that's there, especially in halftime.
Usher has dropped a shot with iPhone mini documentary of his 2024 Super Bowl halftime show. Well, I doubt it's Usher that's actually dropped it, but he does give you a
it's
tour.
On the Apple site. I think it's on the Apple YouTube.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's in there made with iPhone, and I will say that very quickly you just get into watching a documentary about how it's made and you don't think about it being shot with an iPhone. It's amazing. Like it's just really
it's a good camera, isn't it? I mean, it's really a really good amazing camera. Yeah. Yeah. And you're a pro. I mean, you're using very expensive cameras.
I'm kind of amazed at how often, unless I'm really, there's definitely some workflow issues, especially if you're doing live, that make more sense to do with a real, with a bigger camera and so on and so forth. But I've taken out my camera. I'll take out a still camera thinking I'm going to shoot with it, and I get a little ways into it, and I just pull out my iPhone. Like, I'm not going to have any GPS on those photos, and I'm not going to have, and I have to figure out how to transfer them, and I have to do all those other things. So I find myself taking some with the digital still camera, and then I go back to the iPhone, and my daughter's in two rock bands, and so she's playing two different bands one night in the same night, and so I was shooting with the iPhone, and I couldn't believe the footage I got. I'm at a concert by a stage, shooting the stage with dark lighting, and I shot both spatial as well as 4K 60, and it just looked great, and I think that's what's really amazing about it. But it's, by the way, it's worth watching the documentary outside of the iPhone.
It's really cool.
Notoriety.
Yeah.
You get to see how big these events are. Like, some of those rehearsals that they're showing were probably done 2 months before the show. I don't know if they show, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were working all that stuff out, 60 to 90, knowing Apple, 60 to 90 days before, because they have to make decisions about where to put the stage. And it could have been 6 months before in reality, because they have to design the stage around what they're doing, what they're doing there. And you can see the circles on the ground. So that they already had an idea of what they were going to actually build.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
But I believe that Tate does those. Tate is the company that does a lot of infrastructure for like Taylor Swift and everything else. And so I believe they work on those ones as well. And so they're probably building that all out in Lititz, Pennsylvania, figuring that out 6 months ahead of time.
Oh, you've told us about them. Yeah.
So
they built out this whole, it's like a town almost.
It's pretty big. It's a bunch of, there's 2 huge warehouses there that Rock Lititz that, it's just funny because I got my first day that I was going to Rock Lititz for some work. I got stuck behind an Amish cart. So anyway, it was
it's kind of interesting.
It's right. It's just
mix, isn't it? Yeah.
I was like, this is so classic, because I'm in a farm stuck behind a cart, and then I get there, and then it's all high tech.
So do you know that it was the rehearsal was Rock Lititz, that's where it was, or?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
No, and you wouldn't need to be there for that. You would need to be, you could do it in LA, because that looks like a big soundstage. What I'm saying is that they're probably building and testing it there. The hardware is my guess. If Tate was involved, they would do that. And then they would, but he could be in LA or wherever he wants to be. I don't know where Usher's based. I don't know whether he's LA or New York. If he was in New York, it probably would be easiest to fly. You can fly
to Philly.
I think it's like 30 minutes from New York to Lititz.
Right.
So on a helicopter, and about 2.5 hours on train, which is what I take. I take the train. So anyway, I don't have that kind of money.
It's really, I mean, this is it's fun to see I like behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
But it's really fun to see this, the video, because you really can see, they must rehearse for months to do this. It's incredible.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not just, it's rehearsal, it's then redesign, it's then planning, it's then figuring, because what happens is when you're in rehearsal, you think of new things. Like, oh, it'd be really cool if we did this, or you could see it in some of those behind the scenes of them thinking about that. Like, oh, we can do this,
playing with it, working with it. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, you want to have the time to do that and figure it all out. I'm hoping that we see some spatial video. I'm hoping that they put some of those R5s somewhere in the event, so that they post some spatial video at some point. So
it's interesting, because I suspect that a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, it says all of it was shot by well, not all of it, but it says, it's funny, it says all shot on iPhone by director Mike Carson, but then you see Xiaolong Liu also shot some stuff. But I'm wondering if maybe Carson shot this while they're rehearsing for his own use.
No, I think,
and then said, "Hey, by the way, you could be great behind the scenes. Here's some footage."
I think they probably planned it out for him to shoot a lot of this stuff. But the interesting thing is, what I couldn't quite figure out is how are they doing when they do the shots of him. When they say all shot, there are shots from the actual event. And
right. That's right. He probably didn't shoot that. Yeah.
Or they shot it in rehearsal. So they could have shot.
Yeah,
they could have simulated it with lights in the background and shot it. Because that's the only thing. It did look a little bit more regular in these shots. The audience looked more regular than they did during the actual show. So I think that they may have shot.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They may have shot all of it in rehearsal.
Yeah. Really cool. And they made the behind the scenes stuff black and white, which I love. I'm a big fan. Yeah. Cool. That way you know which is real and which is real. Let's see what else. Don't expect a Vision Pro sooner than later. Mark Gurman doubles down and says, no, it's at least 18 months, despite rumors that you might have heard to the contrary. So we're not going to see Vision Pro 2 for at least a year and a half. Oh, of course. Thank you.
If it was, I'd be 2025. It would really surprise me. Like they have a lot to evolve.
There's
here.
a lot to work on.
If it was before 2026, I'd be really surprised.
Yeah, same.
And Jason is reminding me, as I completely forgot, the Apple 6 Colors report card is out. Woohoo! Look forward to this every year.
You guys are all in it, you see.
Thank you for asking.
You might want to mention it.
Thank you for asking me. I've never done it before. I was very excited to be asked. And then I saw that everybody wrote like 1,000 words on every question. So
I know mine was really short. I was like, wow, that was a lot of verbosity.
Bless you for following the instructions where I very clearly say to everybody, you don't need to write a lot.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to post a lot.
I looked at the long responses and I thought,
oh my God,
wow, someone's been a lot of time.
Good. I don't feel so bad then. I thought, well, they're all professional writers, and I just
mine was short.
Yeah,
I cut stuff out too, but still, it's people are writing.
Like,
people
here's
25,000 words. It's a lot of words in there.
Leo Laporte wrote. Okay, that's a paragraph. Here's some other people. I won't name names. John Gruber was a little.
John Siracusa and who
I'd
else
expect that from
writes a lot?
Siracusa because he writes 18,000 word reviews. Used to write 18,000 word reviews.
Christina Warren.
Christina's a lot. Yeah, the writers go on and on.
That's fine.
The radio people
faster.
go a paragraph.
The radio people type
happens.
with 3 fingers, and the writers type with 10 fingers.
So I'm not
difference.
A lot of what happens is that then they post their responses on their own blogs too, right? Which is good. Like good, yes, do that. That's I like that. But I put them in there even though it's a lot. If you don't want to read them all, it's fine. Although I will say, because I randomize it per section, but the unintentional juxtapositions are sometimes hilarious where people are like, everything on Apple TV Plus is great. I really liked Apple TV Plus. There's nothing on Apple TV Plus. I'm like, wah, wah, hilarious.
So to all the time, couldn't get no one.
It's just some of that stuff is amazing. But the point of the report card, and I'm sure I said this last year, is it shouldn't actually come as a surprise. Anybody who's been listening to conversations about Apple, the point is more to get that down and say, like, here is sort of the general vibe in the room of how people are feeling who think about and talk about and write about Apple on a regular basis, how Apple is doing in the last year, and then comparing it to previous years as well. Exactly. And then everybody gets their own say in the article to say whatever they want. And you can see there's in a lot of categories a real diversity of opinion where some people think this is great and there's no problems, and somebody else says it's terrible and it's never been worse. And it's
that's one of the things that makes it so valuable is that you've been doing this for years and years and years, but also you hit up the same people. You add people to the list, but it's usually the same bulk of people. See, the same point of view, the same rules, the same expectations filtered year after year after year after year. It's a very interesting thing to track.
So what is it's many pages of content.
So many pages.
I noticed that the iPad got a D. I mean, not doing well. Not doing well.
The big movers. There's a chart about like the change since last year. The big movers, Apple Watch and wearables actually were down the most, almost 1 point out of, and this is on a 1 to 5 scale that I asked people to rate on. And then iPad, Apple TV down about 0.5 point, and services down about 0.5 point. So those are the ones that moved down. Mac was static, and then some of the other categories. iPhone was up a tick, not a lot. iPhone, HomeKit, hardware and software, developer relations was actually up a little bit, which is surprising given how much we talk about this issue. There's pros and cons, and they're sort of environmental, social. Is Apple leaving the world a better place? Actually, they got some credit for the carbon neutral products, I think, is really what pushed them up a little bit there on their average score.
Okay. You must read it because there's a lot here, and I think it's a good,
or skim it. I mean, even if you just read the section
Just
heads,
look
where
for
you
my
see-
name. Just
you
look
see
for
the
my name.
trends, search for our names. You see the trends. You can see like the iPad had kind of was doing really well and has trended way down. The iPad had the lowest score in the entire survey, 2.4 out of 5. That's a bad grade. It's not quite an F, but it's real close.
Yeah.
And so interesting to see the places where like Mac and iPhone are riding high. That's the truth of it. Hardware reliability is perceived to be extremely high. Apple is given mostly a lot of credit for environmental and social stuff. Although, like I said, for every comment about something like the zero, the carbon neutral planning that they're doing and that they're holding other companies to account by making an example of themselves, there are also lots of comments in there about Apple not doing that when it comes to dealing with union organization in their own stores, right? And it's in the eye of the beholder for a category like that. So, it's not shocking to have people in the Apple Silicon era. Guess what? The Mac scores are really good. And the iPhone scores have generally been really good for a while now. And since the butterfly keyboard went away, the hardware score has actually been really good. These are things that we know, but there's still some unrest. I would say the iPad, because it didn't release anything, even though I thought that there were some interesting milestones like Final Cut and Logic on the iPad, no new iPads. And then I feel a general, and you can see it in the financial numbers too, speaking of charts, a general malaise over wearables in general and the Apple Watch in particular, that it feels like there's just kind of not, with AirPods and the Apple Watch, there's just kind of not a lot going on right now there, and people are
very impressive group of Apple experts and aficionados. These are the people who are, on the front lines of Apple reportage, but also usership. Do you think there is a trend line in general for how these people feel about what Apple's up to?
I would say, in general, I would say no, because I think some of the things that scored very badly at the beginning have actually come on. I started asking about developer relations at a point where I think they were pretty low, and they've actually gotten better. Services perception has gotten better over time. The iPad's perception got better and now has gotten worse. Hardware reliability, we started in the butterfly keyboard era or just before it, and so it really took a hit but has come back. I think what you see is that people have different views of Apple in different areas, and that it's very rare that you get a moment where everything is bad or everything is good. And maybe some of that is that we're comparing the two, but I think it's also true that there are times when Apple, as we've been doing this for all the years that we've all been watching them, there are areas where they're hitting on all cylinders at any given time, and there are other areas where they're not, and that those areas change over time.
And of course, no Vision Pro in this year's report card, but there will obviously be next year.
Yeah, people were anticipating it because of the announcement, but nobody had actually seen one yet, because this was all surveyed in January, and they were supposed to limit their thoughts to 2023.
Speaking of John Gruber, he could have said this earlier. I fell for it. A lot of us said, Apple had to put in RCS because of Europe, because of the DMA. John waited until the Europeans said, by the way, messages has nothing to do with us. It's too small to even care about. So go ahead, and Apple, and pursue your own truth. He says, interestingly, that he believes it was China and the Chinese governmental requirements that brought RCS to the iPhone. Actually, that makes sense. I was pretty uncritical when I said it's the DMA. That actually didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it is interesting because, like, why would Apple do a turnaround? I thought that it was a number of factors, known and unknown. I thought that at some point there was some architectural reason why this previously was not the time to do it. The fact that they acknowledged kind of under their breath that they were going to be implementing RCS and essentially solving most. It's arrogant to say most, but what I would consider to be most of my arguments about why Apple should be supporting RCS. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm going to rewind and go back again. I had a lot of complaints about why Apple was intentionally, it seemed, nerfing the experience when you create the massive transgression of having friends and relatives who don't own iPhones and wanting to talk to them. It seemed as though it was a simple thing to fix this by supporting this standard, and I thought they were being petulant by not doing so. I was wondering whether there was an architectural reason why they couldn't until a certain release came up, whether there's something we didn't know about, whether it was just, well, we're going to do it eventually. Now is just the time when we have the staff and the time in order to do it. But yeah, it's I should have known better that, again, they move best when they're forced to do stuff. It's like,
who does it?
They're not going to realize that all of a sudden at some point in 2024, if the tracking is correct, everybody is going to get better. Everybody's going to get better photos sent on the group chat. The group chat is going to be more alive and interactive. Again, assuming that you aren't just like inbreeding with iPhones everywhere. So much of the experience at iMessage is going to be so much better at no sacrifice to the security, the privacy, or the safety of the device. And it's only because begrudgingly Apple acknowledged that, okay, well, we have to comply with this rule if Gruber's correct in China. Yeah. Actually, let's. I think they probably did the math and say, would it be too much of a middle finger if we only did it in China, or is that going to create so much blowback we may as well just flip the switch for the entire world?
So there was 7 months ago, and credit to my Six Colors reader Mahir, super fan reader Mahir, who posted this in the Six Colors Discord 7 months ago. China's proposed regulation could force Apple to implement RCS, and it's a very specific 5G related regulation that says basically we're going to give you a transitional period after which you will need to support RCS. So the writing was kind of on the wall 7 months ago. It is interesting that this came up now, and I actually kind of enjoyed the speculation, including in the Twit member Discord, that maybe this was a leak to Gruber from somebody at Apple who said, don't give the EU credit for this. Come on.
It was China. We all know it was China.
It was China.
Now,
it wasn't the
I'm
EU.
surprised the Chinese would want RCS because is it not end-to-end encrypted?
Not by default. It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
So what the Chinese are actually going to do is say, oh, yeah, put in RCS, but make sure you don't do end-to-end.
Yeah, RCS is run by the carriers like SMS. So essentially, if you
all the carriers,
exactly, if you own the carriers, or basically if you control the carriers, you control. Yeah, you control the encryption if you want to. I'm not saying they would.
Anything else before we go to a break and get your picks of the week? I am looking through all the excellent things you guys put in here. Accessibility in the Vision Pro. There was
we mentioned that in passing, but there were a bunch of good articles this week.
A bunch of good articles about this. This is one from Upload, Rebecca Rosenberg, analyzing Apple Vision Pro as an accessibility engineer. Summarize for me, Jason. It's good?
That one was put in by Andy. I was writing about the Zach Knox and Shelley Brisbane articles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So she explained the experience of putting it on and giving it a trial. She also explained that she has problems. Her vision trouble has to do with convergence of her left and right eye, and she found it difficult to use on that basis. She's also the person that noted that. Well, like again, no. She's.
It's not good if you're blind either. I mean, if you have poor vision.
Well, everybody has to report like what their experience is going to be.
I guess so.
Again, Apple's doing. Stephen Aquino has been doing a good job. I can't wait for him to get his hands on one, or if he has.
That's the one where you were saying you don't need hands to actually get the touch.
Right. Exactly. Again, it's a lot of people who have differences of ability have been trying this out and reporting. Again, I have one eye. All I had to do was basically tell Vision Pro I'm going to be using this in monocular fashion. It worked fine.
Oh, that's interesting.
She also has a problem because, again, this is why a lot of these problems Apple is very well invested in solving, but some of them might be unsolvable. Like, again, another problem that she had is that her eyes tend to jitter a little bit, and of course, the Vision Pro is not going to be able to really do the eye tracking well that way. So, is it given that on the iPhone and pretty much all the other devices that Apple makes, they are able to accommodate nearly every person who wants to use this device? What's the difference going to be when you have a device like this that might be an even larger physical and engineering challenge than anything else? The USA Today had a very, very I think it was published just today or yesterday, explored this issue from many dimensions, not just people who use accessibility features, but what happens if you have a hairstyle that is like long, thick braids that are on the top of your head? What if you can't get this headset on over your hair, and that's a problem. What if? And also the question of like dudes are going to be a lot more comfortable walking around with a $3,500 device on their head. If you are a more vulnerable person in our society, you might feel as though I shouldn't do this at all. And it's not an attack on or a fault of the Vision Pro. It's merely calling attention to the fact that the people who design these devices for the people who buy these devices tend to, without even knowing it, introduce certain biases that aren't going to be visible until everybody tries to use it. And then you point out that, look, this is how I've worn my hair, since my mom used to braid it when I was 8 years old, and I can't use it simply because of the fact that it won't stay on my head. So what's the problem here, and what should I do?
A couple of new features in iTunes. There's a replay that goes month to month now instead of just year to year. And there is a feature now, apparently Apple's going to put in a feature that we'll see how well this goes, that will let you import your Spotify playlists.
Yes.
It's like, okay, Spotify.
And export, right?
Yeah, sure.
Supposedly in a beta, someone has spotted support for, I can't remember the name of the service, but there's an existing service that acts as a bridge between.
Oh, but I think it's only on Android right now that Apple's doing it.
Right, but there is a central. It's not as though they're developing their own solution.
is on iOS too.
Something like that. I'm afraid I don't have it in front of me, but yeah. So there's that. So that the cagey thing is that no one is reporting on whether it is. Obviously, it's to help you migrate from Spotify to Apple Music. There's no hint so far as to whether it also help you sync Apple Music to Spotify or other services. But of course, I mean, Apple is not necessarily going to be invested in helping you switch to a service. It's Spotify's job to make it easy to switch to Spotify.
There's a gripe I have, which is Spotify is such a default everywhere. The people, group some in and stuff, they'll share Spotify playlists. Yeah. And if you don't have a Spotify, I guess you can always do it with a free account, but I want to put it in my Apple Music. I'm paying for Apple Music, so that's
nice. Why I use SongShift.
SongShift.
Oddly enough, whenever I recommend music, like the one default I will always go to is, believe it or not, Amazon Music, because I know that everybody can click on this and at least get a 30-second sample, and then they know they're going to have to go to wherever they go to get their music. But as I recommend music in the future, I do have to do at least the triple threat of I do have to feel like I have to give a Spotify link and an Apple Music link, because you feel like I just jab my thumb in your eye saying, oh, by the way, here's something so you can be teased by it, but then you're going to have to go do a search yourself.
Yeah,
I
will say that SongShift was like, that's what got me off of Spotify, was that once I had it, I had moved all those. I have like, I don't know, 60 or 70 playlists. Yeah. And so I, that held me to Spotify. So I was using Apple Music for a long time as just like Siri works. When I asked for her to play, when I asked Siri to play something, it would play. So that's what I use Apple Music for. And then I use Spotify. And then at some point I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And SongShift allowed me to move everything from Spotify to Apple Music. So then when the Spotify thing happened, I was like, okay, we're done. And now I have to admit that I will build things. I still have the free version, and I will build things on Spotify for somebody who's using Spotify, but I'm now too far down. This is what happens with these playlists. I'm too far down, and my kids all use Spotify, which is really where I mostly trade playlists. Yeah. so that we're all in the same.
It is tough. I subscribe to both, and the main reason for doing so is because I write about all this stuff, and so I need to have both of them sort of ready to go if I need to check out updates and stuff like that. But nonetheless, there are so many times when, like the end credits of one of the early episodes of Bob's Burgers this year ended with a really obscure but beautiful Stevie Wonder song. It was actually only a single, and you can only get it through a singles collection that is, I can't remember if it's only available on Spotify or only available on Apple Music, but it was only available in this one place. And so everybody can get you the latest hot album from whomever, but there's always that little. There's that 2% that it's only available on one service or another, and when you really want to listen to it, it frustrates the hell out of you that this exists.
The video version of that drives me absolutely crazy. There was this documentary called What Drives Us, which is a documentary that Dave Grohl did about bands getting started and touring. It's incredible. Lower budget than some of his other stuff, but incredible. Incredible interviews with Ringo and, Steven Tyler, and then all these, everyone else in between. But you had to go to Amazon, and then you had to order Coda as at least a demo to actually get it. Like, you can't buy it anywhere. And I was like, I feel like I shouldn't support this methodology, but I still did because I wanted to see it.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Couple of things from our club. Alex Howard has shared something called song.link, which is a way to share songs with everybody, regardless of platform, which I think is a really great idea. Song.link, and then you can listen to it on the platform that you choose. And we have that lovely Club Twitch shared playlist, which maxed out pretty quick at 100 people.
Yes.
But has a lot of good songs. I want to thank everybody who does that. And if you're, I guess we should start it. Maybe Andy, you should start one next or something, because you did that Just One Song playlist, which was the inspiration. And some people put in multiple songs, but it's fun. I listen to it in the car when I'm on my way home, because I appreciate all the people who submitted, and I hear a lot of stuff I've never heard of before. Yeah. There's now 104 songs in there. I don't know what the max possible is.
I saw the playlist, and nobody was putting in tequila, Yellow Submarine.
Yeah,
like, no,
it's good.
Look, you got one shot to give someone a new experience.
Yeah.
Like, maybe not something off of the Pink Floyd album.
I really appreciate it. And here's all the wonderful people who collaborated. I see Mike is in there. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, there it is. It's slowly populating. Thanks to all of you. Jason, do you have a? Because I follow you on iTunes because I like your music choices. Do you have a shared playlist or using anything like that?
I experimented with it, but I haven't done more than that with it. I haven't opened it up to a collaboration. Dan Morin and I made a 6 Colors playlist that was literally just songs with colors in the title.
That's fun.
But that's
I
about
wonder
all
if we
I've
should
done
every week
so far,
we should do a shared playlist with some sort of topic. That's an interesting idea. My funeral playlist is on Spotify. I have to migrate that over to iTunes before I die. Just make a note of that, would you? All right, let's take a little minor break, and then we will continue with your picks of the week. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Jason Snell from 6colors.com, Andy Anatko from GBH Boston, and soon the fabulous Anatko.com, and Mr. Alex Lindsay from officehours.global. Time for the picks of the week. Let's kick it off with Alex Lindsay. Hi, Alex. What do you got for us?
So we had Moog on, Geert Bevan from Moog on last week on Office Hours, and he was showing us the Animoog Galaxy, and it's kind of mind-blowing. So this is an Apple Vision app. Now Moog has been pretty good at adding a lot of iPad apps that are out there as well. So and Geert is part of that. Is part of the group. He leads the group, I believe, that does that. And so they started experimenting with the Apple Vision, and so he kind of walked us through what he was doing. But it's one of those apps in Apple Vision that it opens up and you realize, oh, this is going to go somewhere. Like the world of music is going to go somewhere. Which is that there's this little thing that you can experiment with. So that little what you're looking at there. That is like something that's like a little player, and it plays a little bit of something, and you can open up some areas and set it over to the side somewhere in your Vision world, and you can hear the music as if it was playing, and you can kind of build things for it. But when you go into the Galaxy, so there's a little thing of Galaxy here, and I think that this is it. So now you have this interface, and you're able to use both your fingers and your eyes to play it. And you can move that thing at the top. You can actually move it around, and it will change how it's playing, and how that simulation happens. And you have a lot of the tools. What's interesting is this is really coming from a company that knows a lot about synthesizers. They kind of invented the space, so that comes from a synthesizer background, and then ties it in. Now you can also take. This is the part that I didn't understand. Is you can take Bluetooth keyboards and tie it into your headset.
Wow.
And you can tie I/O from this to the iPad apps, not just their iPad apps, but any iPad apps that can be shown up here. So you can have them in it interacting with other. And he didn't show that as much on this one, and it's something that I'm just downloading all the synthesizers apps I've ever bought to start playing with. But the idea is you could build that kind of synthesizer experience where you have a bunch of synthesizers and you can start tying them all together. And I think that in many ways, in the area of synthesizers, we've seen a lot of innovation in what you can do on an iPad, but it always felt like you were dealing with this like 2D screen. And there's something about in the Vision Pro being able to start grabbing onto things and moving things again and having a slightly more organic experience. It does cost money. This is like a $30 app. I put it off for a while. I put it off for a couple of, for like a week. I was like, I'm not going to, I have all the other Moog stuff. So I was like, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get it. I finally downloaded it and it's really, really cool. And we had a great hour with him last week, but it's a incredible application. And again, it shows you, what's exciting about it is it shows you there's this place that we're about to go with music, especially with synthesizers, that is going to take us to another place in VR that we didn't have before. Like where we're building music that in a way that we couldn't build in the real world. And I think that's going to be they're doing a lot of R&D there right now.
Jason Snell, pick of the week.
I've got a really quick one. It's a camera. So I have been using a lot of different cameras around my house, and I decided recently and I made it a pick of the week. I bought an indoor camera that used HomeKit Secure Video, and I have to say I'm so impressed with the reliability and the ease of use of HomeKit Secure Video. If you are an iCloud Plus subscriber, you have access to a certain number of cameras. It's encrypted. It goes to Apple. Apple stores it. You don't have to pay another. I was paying for one of my outdoor cameras to be 24/7 through the hardware of that, that provider. They have a service. And I was like, why am I doing this when I have HomeKit Secure Video? So I bought a Logitech Circle View camera for $160. It's waterproof. It comes with a mount. You can stick it outside. It's wired. It's not wireless. I fortunately have it like right by my garage, and it kind of like sneaks inside and plugs in. Don't tell anybody. But it is, I've been using it for a couple of weeks, and it is great to have HomeKit Secure Video. It is recording all the stuff. I have it set to record any movement basically that it sees. So essentially I get to see everything that's going on for the last 24 hours. I can see that cat that comes by at 2 a.m., whatever it is. I have bought some Logitech Circle cameras in the past and not been impressed by them. My biggest endorsement about this one is once you connect it to HomeKit, you don't use any special Logitech anything. It's just the Home app. And that's good because I don't want to use special camera software or websites. I just want to use the Home app, and it works. So far, so good. I will probably buy more.
Google just doubled or something. It's a subscription for the Nest Aware in EU. I'm an Apple One, and I think I get like 5 cameras at 24/7 with this. It's like, so I was very happy to cancel that other subscription and instead just use my existing HomeKit Secure Video from iCloud Plus. $159.99 on the Logitech site, the Logitech Circle
good quality,
camera.
Good video.
Jason, we're going to let you go. I know you need to get out of here. I appreciate it. Thank you for your 6colors.com. All the great podcasts he does is 6colors.com/Jason. Oh, before you go, though, I did want to show you this because I know you're a Pythonista, right? You like Python?
Yes, indeed.
So there is a great book about, I'm not a Python guy. I'm
the language, not the snake. I don't like the snake.
I'm a common Lisp guy. But there is a very, very good book that is now coming out in the 3rd edition called Think Python. One of the things I've always loved about Python is the Jupyter notebooks. And this entire book is going to be published as a Jupyter notebook, which means you can read the book, but also will have interactive code and quizzes that you could type in. I think the Jupyter notebook is an amazing feature. This is actually running on Colab, Google's free Jupyter notebook platform. But you could also move it to your own Google Drive if you wanted to. Anyway, if you want to learn Python, great book to do it, and what a great way to do it. So that was going to be my pick, but I'll let you go because I know.
I love it. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a great day. We'll see you next week on MacBreak Weekly. And we'll wrap things up with Andy Anacco's pick of the week.
I've got a good one, and it might be time critical. Nimona is an animated movie that was released on Netflix recently. It is amazing. It's wonderful. It's based on a graphic novel by N.D. Stevenson that was released like 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. One of my absolute favorites. And the animation is beautiful. very, very high recommendation. It also had one of those like very modern, very difficult births where it was originally being produced by Fox, and then Fox got bought by Disney, and then Disney decided, maybe not. And so basically then Netflix picked it up and they were able to make it, and basically shows you that maybe you should not be throwing out really great movies before they're actually finished, before an audience can get at them. Now, again, normally you need Netflix for it, but lucky us and lucky for the film, it got nominated in the category of for an Oscar in the category of Best Animated Feature. So I think, not coincidentally, voting for the Oscars is either it's already open or it opens on the 22nd. It ends on the 27th. And today, Netflix posted the entire movie for free on YouTube. You don't have to have YouTube Premium. I mean, it is just a video they posted to YouTube. So I 100% recommend that you see it. If I've interested you in it at all, maybe see it before the 27th, because I don't know, but it's possible they decided to put it on Netflix to make sure that any Academy of voter who wants to see it doesn't even have to email anybody or open an email or look for a special code or anything. So it might disappear. The Academy Awards are March 10th. Maybe if it's still there on the 27th, it'll be there until they actually give out the Oscars. I'm sure at some point they're going to want to actually get that audience back on Netflix, but very, very high recommendation, and you can't beat the price.
Is this an anime movie, or
I don't know if you call it anime. It's not a Japanese production. It's not a Japanese writer or Japanese story. It's that kind of like it's a really cool, like modern medieval sort of story with magic, and
looks like Frank Zappa's in it too, which is pretty exciting.
That's the main character. And I will promise you, at no point does an orphan burst into song about there's a great big world out there and they can't wait to get out there to be in it. There's nothing like that. It's actually very, very modern. It's really, really
Nimona,
great. Appropriate for kids, but very, very good.
Oh, nice. And if you do have a Netflix subscription, Maestro, which is nominated for a Best Picture, is an awfully good film. I know Oppenheimer, everybody says, is going to sweep, but I think Maestro might sneak in there because it's an awfully good film. Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, that's that.
Everyone, it's like every actor has that one movie, that one role where it's like, can't die until I make this movie, and I'm going to make this work.
Sometimes it's good, and sometimes not.
Sometimes it's good.
Remember,
Sometimes
Kevin Spacey always wanted to. Exactly. Yes, exactly.
What did Kevin Spacey always want to do? What was
Bobby Darin?
A biopic of Bobby Darin when he was like 3 times too old to play Bobby Darin. And of course, he wanted to do all the singing and dancing himself. And it was, and that was even before we had very, very, very big reasons not to like him. That was that was not a good moment for him. That was the epitome of he's shut up, green light this. He's making us so much money on all the good movies. Let's have him have a really bad one. It's okay.
Even in the Vision Pro. Beyond this, in fact, it might be worse than the Vision Pro.
You don't want to be, maybe the thing will short circuit. You can't get it off. You'll be stuck with Kevin Spacey as an 83-year-old Bobby Darin.
But I did think Maestro was pretty amazing. I know you're a music fan.
But I meant that like sincerely. That like you can always tell when there's like and also I'll add the codicil that they've been listening to good advice, not just simply saying, hey, this is a good idea because I've always wanted to do it. No. It's like, no, let's try to make something good.
It's a little hard to get used to him in the big nose and but he does an incredible job.
He did. I think he practiced, or he was trained in doing conducting for like 6 years.
Yes,
like it was like 6 years that he.
I can't pronounce his French name, but the conductor of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra actually trained him personally.
And it makes such a big difference when you see it. Those are the little things with any movie that you can tell that someone has the muscle memory to actually do it. They're not just waving something around.
Oh, I agree. It wasn't acting. Tar was pretty good too. I thought she did a good job conducting. Those movies back to back, it's both nominated for Best Picture. It's very interesting. Anyway, thank you, Andrew. Andy Anako, GBH in your future?
Not this week, but next week. I was offered any day on the schedule next week, and of course I chose Leap Day. So Thursday the 30th at 12:30. It's a free day anyway, so it's not like I can waste it. Like that day was not supposed to happen anyway, so I think it's a good use of scheduling. WGBHnews.org to stream it live or later.
Thank you, Andy. Mr. Alex Lindsay is at officehours.global. That's where you go to get the best information about production, about technology, about cameras, about 3D, about Vision Pro, and it's every day of the week.
Yeah, which is crazy. I would not recommend that if you're doing a show, but we can't stop now. So we keep going. Yeah. So we were talking about today. We were talking about we had a great Mickey Black was on yesterday. He's from an ad agency talking about AI and advertising.
Oh,
and
interesting.
How it, becomes part of and it was really, really a great session. And then today we were talking about building USDZs and how we do that for the Apple Vision Pro and so on and so forth.
Such great stuff in here. It's amazing all the stuff you do.
Yeah.
Officehours.global. If you want to join in the conversation, you can. We actually had a caller on Ask the Tech Guys who had a pretty
that.
Yeah. And I thought you should go to Office Hours. They will help you with your audio question. I hope you did. I hope you did. Also, Gray Matter, which is the show that you do with Michael Krasny. What you got coming up there?
I think we have, it should publish today. We were making one last little change, but Joey Zillinger, he is the founder of Allbirds.
Oh, I wear his shoes.
So he's really great. And
I love
Allbirds. Just a really, really great interview about sustainability and what it takes to, put these things together. And so he's really, really good episode interview with him. So it's fantastic.
He put wool shoes on my map. I had never really even considered
what I
shoes.
really loved about what he was talking about is he goes, you cannot have people are not going to buy shoes to save the world. You have to make great shoes that people just want. And then you make them sustainable, but you kind of have to sneak up on them. You can't just it has to be about the quality, not about what it does for the environment or anything else. And so they have a very sustainable shoe, and they're kind of on their way to becoming, a net zero, by 2030 which is shoes is a really dirty business. And so anyway, so it's really
in terms of pollution, not in terms of cutthroat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just the waste created. There's so much you're cutting. There's an enormous amount of waste that's generated by shoe production, and so they've really worked on making that sustainable. So anyway, he talks through that and talks about making it something, about that process. It's good.
Graymatter.show, and that is it for our show. Oh, wait a minute. I have, you were talking about volumetric lighting.
Smoke.
Is this going to work?
Smoke.
I have
the smoker alarms. Here we go. Oftentimes this will puff for a little while, and then suddenly it will become very productive. If I remember correctly.
The haze will drop.
Say that from the dead forward shot, it looks like you're really, really angry.
Hey, we should make this. Let's make this
Get back to work.
Yeah, I find
break time's over.
Usually with that one, it takes a little while to heat up, and it kind of comes out and puffs, and then suddenly it fills the whole room with smoke. Like it's.
I should have been doing this the whole time because it's a manual. I have to push the button per puff, once per puff.
Oh yeah,
is it right behind me, John? I said, where? Because it used to be up in the ceiling. We got this for the New Year's Eve shows. This it's a smoke machine. But now, after a while, it's going to settle down. In fact, you could see that now in the wide shot. Do the one, my over-the-shoulder shot. You can start to see it's getting a little hazy.
What you need is the other one that I have in my garage has got a DMX control. That's really the key. Because then you just send a command.
Yeah, look at that. See, it's getting a little hazy. We're getting that volumetric lighting that you talked about last week.
I didn't want to run it.
Sticky. It's now sticky.
Doesn't it feel much more? Now you need green lasers.
Exactly.
Pew, pew.
Yeah, you need some. I got some. I have some lasers laying around. We could probably bring them up. We throw them
I think, John, we've used up all the solution. It's not. Oh, wait a minute. There it is. Oh, I should just hold it. Oh, God, it's starting to smell terrible. It smells like you've been vaping all day.
Exactly why.
Oh, God. All right. Thank you. They said wait to the end of the show. Now I understand why. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Jason. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1900 UTC. You can watch us do it live on YouTube, youtube.com/twit. You can also watch live if you're a member of our fabulous club. In fact, if you're not a member, can I importune you to become a member? Club Twit is the future of Twit. And, with more and more crap coming out everywhere, both in print, on the web, on YouTube, more and more technology coverage that is really just link bait. I think what we're doing becomes more and more important, and I'd like to keep doing it. I really would, but we need your help. $7 a month helps us pay for smoke machines, studios, hosts, all the stuff we do. Doesn't go into my pocket, but it really does help us stay on the air. And if you are interested, you get all our shows ad-free. You get access to the Discord. You get additional bonus content. You please do me a favor. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit and see what you can do. I would like to continue to do this for a long time. I think we're needed, to be honest. Honest tech coverage. You know, it doesn't pay. That's the problem. So that's why we need you. twit.tv/clubtwit. You can find this show on the website, twit.tv/mbw, ad-supported and fully free, of course. You only pay if you want the ad-free version. There's also a YouTube channel dedicated to the show, MacBreak Weekly. And, of course, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast player. Once you subscribe, you should get it automatically every time we're done. And you can listen at your leisure. Thanks for being here. Thank you, all three of you, and to everybody out there watching. Have a great week. Now I got to tell you, time to get back to work because break time's over. I think we're at a light call. Thank you, guys. Oh, there it is.
Thanks. There you go.
Mad as hell.